about Girl Power. A female-run pro wrestling promotion is putting the glam in Body Slam and playing it up for laughs.
I'm a big fan of burlesque, and he's a big fan of wrestling. And so he came in to me one day and said, "Oh my God, there's wrestling and burlesque."
And that is what they're standing in line for outside of the Mayan Theater in downtown Los Angeles. A night of backdrops, body slams, and burlesque. In other words, Lucha Vavoom. We head backstage from Hill Street to ask co-owner and performer Rita DeAlbert, why are people so into this?
Physical comedy has been with us forever, from Greek times, through all the way through to silent films and music hall, and it always works. This translates to everybody, whatever age you are, whatever culture you come from.
With an emphasis on acrobatics, traditional lucha libre, or Mexican pro wrestling, really took off in the 1940s with the first masked Mexican megastar, El Santo. El Santo wasn't just a wrestler or luchador. He was a movie icon, a folk hero who lived and breathed the part in and out of the ring. Other masked superheroes of the squared circle would follow.
They embody this character in the mask. They're never seen without it. I love that whole mystery. And it's something that's really missing in American culture. We don't have an equal. It'd be like if whoever plays Spider-Man these days just was always in that mask. And you never knew what actor it was. And they didn't care. Like, they were happy to be known as Spider-Man.
Add some comedy, add a little of this, and you get Lucha Vavoom, wowing crowds in Los Angeles since 2003.
It is a mixture of sex and violence, but it's sort of in a cartoony sort of way. So it's not raunchy. It's like, but it's really like, can I say badass? Yeah. It's badass.
So I am actually the reigning champ currently. I've been wrestling for these guys for a few years now, and my character is definitely a little more sexy. I attack people with my own ass, so people always enjoy that. Weird, huh?
That's my cat's name, Calvin.
All comedy aside, these are highly trained performers with years of experience under their championship belts. Many of them have worked for World Wrestling Entertainment and other sports entertainment promotions.
They bring people from Arena Mexico, from AAA, from Japan, from everywhere. Like I was part of WWE too. There's some ex-WWE that are going to wrestle tonight too. I mean, Lucha Vavoom tries to give the people the best they can.
We've been all over the United States. We've been in Japan. We've been all over Australia. There's times we're coming back and we're just sore, tired, but that's what this is about. We love doing what we do.
I feel like our show should be the WWE. We're so much more fun. I want them to work for me. I don't want to work for them. It's really the best job a person could ask for.
Lucha Vavoom rumbles back to downtown LA around Valentine's Day. Learn more at luchavavoom.com. Paint was flying all over the place in downtown LA as artists battled it out for the top spot in a national championship. Here's a look.
We're here at the Art Battle Los Angeles City Finals. It's the culmination of the series here, of the Art Battle events, live competitive painting, the best of the best. In 3 rounds, we're going to determine who is this year's 2018 LA Art Battle City Champion. It's a great time, and people are out here experiencing art. It's so unusual to have a visceral experience with art. I mean, of course, the best of the best really makes you feel something, but here, you're inside the creative process of not just one artist at a time, but 8 artists at a time, and it's a fantastic experience, and it bridges boundaries, and it exposes people people in a way that they have not been before, unless they've been to Art Battle, of course.
This gives a lot of painters and artists exposure to each other, but also to the community, and it also brings the community in and they can see art created, which is something that most people don't get to see.
No, I love it because of what it does for the artists. To see an artist win or to see an artist lose, it's so emotionally meaningful in a way that in many of our experiences in life that they aren't. It's so punctuated, it's so direct, you know?
I'm not one for the spotlight, so this gives me a bit of a rush and a change from being at home in the studio.
LA's the perfect city for it. It's a vibrant, diverse crowd. They care about art. They care about art in a performative way. They're very supportive. It's a fantastic crowd, and we're thrilled to bring the national championships here.
I think this event is an incredibly fun thing, and if you've never been, you should definitely come.
The Art Battle Championship will be held in downtown LA November 28th with even more live painting. Los Angeles is on the cutting edge of the healthy local food trend. Food Day LA is just one of 8,000 such events that happen around the country.
LA is fast making a name as the good food capital of the country. City leaders held the 8th annual LA Food Day, a combination of farmers market and outdoor workshop on all things related to the so-called good food economy, one that produces healthy, affordable, and sustainable food.
This is, I would say, 4 times larger than what we had last year. And it is my honor to encourage everyone to try the food, learn about all the different healthy products and healthy options.
And again, talk about healthy eating, organic food for those who are minorities who may not have that at home.
Good food economy provides access to healthy food for all communities, and it also provides access to good jobs and economic opportunity for all.
Los Angeles has become really one of the food leaders of the United States. Our food here is creative, it's innovative, it's entrepreneurial.
In fact, LA has been honored by the United Nations for its Good Food Purchasing Program, which has pumped $15 million into local food economies. The program is now spreading across the country.
6 years ago today, the city of Los Angeles became the first institution to adopt the Good Food Purchasing Policy, a landmark policy directing departments to purchase food that reflects our shared values in supporting local economies, nutrition, environmental sustainability, fair labor, and animal welfare.
California now also has the Safe Sidewalk Vending Act, which decriminalizes street vendors and brings more variety and access to local food economies.
Again, part of my vision for a good food economy is having street vendors really help activate our streets.
Meanwhile, city leaders are also encouraging grocery stores in food-poor urban areas like South LA to provide more fresh produce and organic foods.
As the richest country in the world, and we're in the richest state and the richest country in the world, everybody in our midst ought to have food, they ought to have good quality food, and it ought to be very accessible to them.
As for the good foods available right here at this event,
I liked it because it had good flavor to it than other normal foods.
LA may have just won itself a new convert to healthy eating.
The city also honored businesses that are good food champions and which provide healthy, affordable food to their community. Well, food was also on the minds of hundreds of Angelinos who came out for LA's first Filipino Angelino Food Festival and block party to enjoy some ethnic Filipino dishes created by some of LA's most innovative chefs and restaurants.
Eat, play, move. That's what it is. This is a traditional Filipino crispy pata. It's basically a pork leg that's deep fried,
but this time the traditional one is just deep fried and dry. This time they made it so special because now it's smothered with spicy sauce over rice, so you can't go wrong with that.
It's nice seeing all the Filipinos come together, support each other, and support the local community.
So I think this is a really cool event. It kind of puts the Filipino mainstream food in the spotlight. So even if you're not Filipino, you can come down here to LA and try like various dishes.
Highlight for us today has been the food and the drink, obviously, but it's the people. You meet so many cool people. We're all enjoying the same thing. We're all out here just showing some love for the Filipino and Filipino-American communities, and we're loving it.
I think it's really great. It's a way to get people together. Food, I think, is a big cultural thing that is easy to get people together, whether you're Filipino or not. I think, getting a community together is always a benefit.
You may think you're just going to see wildlife photography, but you'll get a lot more at the National Geographic Photo Arc exhibit. You may actually start to care about the fate of endangered animals.
Wildlife photographer Joel Sartori is on a mission to photograph 12,000 of the world's most threatened, endangered, or close to extinct animals and get people to care about what happens to them. So far, he's photographed more than 8,000.
I think humans are hunting them, which is not okay, and I think we should do something about it.
Sartori's photography has led to this National Geographic Photo Arc exhibit at the Annenberg Space for Photography.
He actually travels to zoos, so all of the 8,400 species that he has photographed have been animals that are in human care, and so he travels to zoos across the nation, across the world.
So how do you get creepy, crawly, feathery, furry creatures to pose and sit still? Easy. They don't always. You just have to catch that magic moment from inside white boxes, black boxes, in front of dark and light backdrops. Almost always, at some point, if you're patient enough, a memorable photo is born.
I'm really into photography and I'm taking a lot of photography classes, so I thought it'd be cool to see images of animals.
The exhibit has several interactive stations like this one where you answer 15 questions to find out what kind of an animal you are. I have answered 13 of them. I have 2 more, so let's see. My favorite dinosaur, and I am a night owl, and let's see, I get lion.
I've never seen a lot of these animals. It's cool to see them.
Some of the animals are endangered, their populations shrinking, while others are coming back from the brink of extinction. Sadly, this was the last known Columbia Basin pygmy rabbit. It died at the Portland Zoo and is now thought to be extinct. The white rhino is close behind with only 2 known animals left, but they may come back yet.
The white rhinoceros, we only have 2 females left, and so we have scientists on 4 different continents that are working to see what they can do to continue that species. So, for example, they are studying to see if they can create an embryo.
We thought we were just going to see pictures of cute animals, and it really does bring to life for them how important it is to make sure that these animals stay around so that future generations can enjoy them.
I think animals are really important for the world and what they do, so I think it's really heartbreaking that animals are going extinct.
While getting the white rhinos back is still up in the air, it seems Sartori has succeeded in his primary mission, getting humans who see his animals to care.
Sartori has visited 40 countries in his quest to photograph as many of the animals as possible. Well, speaking of animals, experience the wonder and magic of this year's must-see holiday lights at the LA Zoo. Unleash your creativity at an art and craft fair and hit the ice in downtown LA. All this in this week's Things to Do. LA's must-see holiday light experience returns and promises to shine more brightly than ever, with a dazzling new area to explore and luminous updates throughout. Explore a magical wonderland of animal-inspired light displays while enjoying classic seasonal delights under the stars at the LA Zoo. Highlights include a brand new version of the popular Twinkle Tunnel, a dramatic musical water and light show, a glittering disco ball forest, real reindeer, and visits with Santa on select nights. LA Zoo Lights is open nightly 6 to 10 p.m. from November 16th through January 6th, excluding November 22nd, December 24th, and December 25th. Barnsdall Art Center presents Barnsdall Art and Craft Fair. The fair is free, kid-friendly, and a wonderful way to enjoy art with friends and family. Just in time for some holiday shopping, you can expect a fun day as you purchase homemade goods, catering to all tastes and budgets in support of local artists. Barnsdall Art and Craft Fair showcases diverse work from the Art Center students and faculty, including handcrafted jewelry, ceramics, cards, prints, paintings, drawings, and photography. Browse work from local artisans and find the perfect holiday gift, from the next statement piece to the ideal coffee mug. Located next to the world-renowned Frank Lloyd Wright designed Hollyhock House and a stone's throw from the LA County Museum Art Gallery. The Arts and Crafts Fair takes place on November 18th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Barnsdall Art Center in LA. You gotta have some fun on the ice this winter season, so strap on your skates or rent some and hit the Pershing Square Ice Rink. The 7,200 square foot rink will be open through January 21st, and more than 50,000 people are expected to strap on the blades during the 2-month run. Lots of events are planned on the ice that will sure to keep the whole family entertained. For a list of events, go to HollywoodIceRinkDowntownLA.com. And that's a look at some things to do. That's going to do it for this edition. I'm Yana Kay. From all of us here at LA This Week, thanks for joining us. A reminder that you can catch us online at lacityview.org and check out our newest social media videos, LA This Minute. We'll see you back here next week for more of LA This Week.
I got you something very special for our first anniversary. Now close your eyes. Surprise! It's an emergency preparedness kit. Isn't it great? It's got food, water, first aid kit, and this neat emergency tool for shutting off utilities. Honey, we are going to be prepared for any emergency. Honey? Sweetie, I have one more surprise. This really cool cranking flashlight.
Get the message, be prepared.
Good morning, good morning. If everyone could please take your seats. Today is Tuesday, November 13th. I want to welcome each and every one of you to City Hall. This council meets every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. The public is welcome. Madam Clerk, we do have a quorum. Could you call the roll?
Blumenfield, Bonin, Buscaino, Cedillo, Englander, Heristasen, Weezer, Koretz, Krikorian, Martinez, O'Farrell, Price, Rodriguez, Ruiz-Wesson. 12 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. First order of business.
Approval of the minutes.
Mr. Krikorian moves and Mr. Koretz seconds. Next.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Mr. Blumenfield moves and Mr. Price seconds. That brings us where?
And Mr. President, today is Tuesday and time for the flag salute.
You know, I'm going to call on Mr. Buscaino to lead us in our flag salute. If all in the chambers could please rise for our flag salute.
It's with great honor, Mr. President. And as we rise to pledge our allegiance to the greatest flag on earth, let us be reminded of the sacrifices men and women face today to protect our freedom. So together we say, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Buscaino. You know, I think prematurely I let everybody sit down. Let's stand up again. Mr. Blumenfield, I want to kick it over to you. Let's all rise for one more minute, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can I ask that we're going to start in a moment of silence before we get to that? You know, we did this last week after the shooting, or the week before in the shooting in Pittsburgh. And we talked about how terrible it was and how we don't want to have to do this again. And yet here we are again. And we have, unfortunately, a lot of souls to remember today. Souls who were killed by hate in the borderline shooting just to my west in terms of the district. I mean, it is closer to my district than getting to downtown. It is really our neighbors. It is right there. And then in Florida, we had someone motivated by hate against women who shot people there. And then also we have to stand in silence to the souls that were lost to Mother Nature this weekend. We've had horrible tragedy, the worst and most devastating fire in California history in terms of lives lost. We had 42 people die up north. 2 people died that we know of so far right here in the Woolsey fire. So I'd ask that we begin this meeting by taking a moment of silence to think of all of those souls who have passed either, again, from this horrible culture of hate that has been just developing in this country, or from those who died from fires.
Thank you, and you may be seated. Madam Clerk, why don't we continue by going through the agenda?
Mr. President, there is a request to continue item 25B for 30 days to December 12th.
So ordered.
Items 1 through 18 are items for which public hearings have been held. Items 18A and F require motions. Would you like to hold those on the desk?
Let's hold those. Do you have cards?
These items have all had public hearings.
Okay, then let's prepare to vote on the remaining items. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Continue.
Items 19 through 28 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay, so without objection, those items are now before this body. Continue.
And Mr. President, we do have cards on all these items.
So we'll hold those items. And Mr. Bonin.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to ask we send items 4 and 5 urgent forthwith, please.
Okay, we'll do that. Let's vote on the urgent forthwith. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Okay, continue. Mr. Buscaino.
Item 2 forthwith, please. Item 2.
Item 2 at Mr. Buscaino's request. Continue.
Item 29 is an item scheduled for closed session. Would you like to hold that on the desk?
I'll defer to Mr. Krikorian at this time.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Item 29 is a routine settlement that was considered by Budget and Finance, which recommends approval of the city attorney's recommendation of settlement. That can be done in open session unless members have questions or concerns.
Okay, let's take that up now. I don't see any questions or concerns. Let's prepare to vote on this item. Open the roll.
Excuse me, Mr. President, and then for item 29, in the case entitled Mitchell Malone versus the City of Los Angeles et al., there is a recommendation to expend up to $175,000 in settlement.
Thank you. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Okay. Continue.
She just said no. And Mr. President, on the supplemental agenda, item 30 is an item for which a public hearing has been held.
Okay, let's prepare.
There is a request to hold the item on the desk.
Then let's hold it, and now that brings us where?
Mr. President, that now takes council back to presentations, items called special or general public comment.
Okay, I think I want to recognize Mr. Harris Dawson at this time.
Join Mr. Buscaino, will be joining us this morning. I want to thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity to make this presentation that we're all very, very proud of. Sitting to my right, and we're going to be nice and let them sit down for the presentation. Let's give a big round of applause to the Community Safety Partnership officers of the great Los Angeles Police Department. Normally, when we do a presentation, we ask everybody to stand up, but we know you all are doing a lot of walking of the streets and being in the parks and being in football leagues and at community meetings, and so we'll let them keep their seats this morning. We're extremely proud to present and honor the Community Safety Partnership program of the Los Angeles Police Department. This unit, thank you, Mr. Price. One more time for Mr. Curran Price, my colleague as well. The Community Safety Partnership was formed in the Los Angeles Police Department in our housing projects to combat violent crime and community distrust of officers and community misunderstandings between members and the police. What this program did was committed certain officers who stepped up and applied, who wanted to do this kind of work, and gave them a long-term assignment in a specific community. And different than other programs, police officers weren't necessarily evaluated on how many people they arrested or how many tickets they gave out or how many citations they gave out or how many misdemeanors they gave out. They were instead evaluated for their impact on community and their community relationships, how many sports leagues they participated in, how many community meetings they participated in. And it is because of this program that we were able to see tremendous change beginning in Watts in Mr. Buscaino's district at the Jordan Downs housing project. I'm very proud because after going to a number of housing projects, the Community Safety Partnership actually set down roots and did an experiment, and Chief Beck and Arcos and many of the leaders were not quite sure it was going to work as well outside of a housing project. as it did inside of a housing project, but we're very excited that in the Harvard Park neighborhood, in the 8th District, which is not a housing project, the Community Safety Partnership took root 2 years ago. And since that time, everybody get ready for this. The year before we did Community Safety Partnership in Harvard Park, we had 8 homicides in the neighborhood around Harvard Park. The first 2 years of the program at Harvard Park, not only did homicides go down to 0, violent crime calls went down to 0. That's a big deal. Everybody ought to clap their hands for that. We did have an incident a couple months ago, but the officers were able to track down the person within a matter of hours after the incident because they were there and because they had built trust with the community in over the 2 years that they'd been there. And so we are just ecstatic and proud as Angelenos about this project, about our role in leading the national conversation on community policing and setting an example for what should be, not just in these neighborhoods in Los Angeles, but all over the city and indeed all over the country. I want to call forward my colleague who knows this better than anybody or as well as anybody, someone who spent hours and hours walking the beat and has been as big a champion as anybody for Community Safety Partnership in the city of Los Angeles, our own Councilmember Joe Buscaino.
Thanks, Marquise. Thank you. Thank you, Marquise. It's always great to be reunited with my brothers and sisters from the Los Angeles Police Department. I'm here to stand with Marquise and Curran to celebrate the amazing work the LAPD Community Safety Partnership, which began in Jordan Downs, as you heard, in 2011. But before I dive into my comments, I want to share with you Amada Tingridis, who's here. She was tasked in 2011 to put together this Community Safety Partnership program and ensure that we have the right officers in place, to ensure that officers show their heart behind the badge and in setting place this partnership program with the Housing Authority. And I was there, I was on loan to the South Bureau at a time when they told Amada that she wouldn't be a part of the selection process. And she was very emotional because she wanted to make sure we had the right men and women serving in this partnership program. But Amada, fast forward to where we're at today, 5 years, 6 years later, it's now not only a citywide model, but a national model. And we thank you for your leadership and dedication to the Community Safety Partnership Program. But know that due to its unprecedented success, the CSP would soon grow to cover a total of 5 housing developments, including Avalon Gardens, Gonzac, Imperial Courts, and Nickerson Gardens. Spread over these 5 housing developments, 1 lieutenant, 4 sergeants, and 40 officers dedicated to making Watts a safer place to live through the Community Safety Partnership Program. Its impacts in our communities are far-reaching and vital in strengthening the relationship between our constituents and their local law enforcement officers. CSP Models is a relationship and community-based policing that's quite literally transformed one of the hardest-hit communities. And as an example, over a 3-year stretch without a homicide surrounding the Jordan Downs development is accredited to the CSP presence. Again, as we know, the history of the Jordan Downs development, one of the most violent housing developments in the country, has not seen a homicide in a 3-year period. Let's give that a round of applause. It goes to show relationship-based policing does work. At every corner and each opportunity, CSP is looking for and creating ways to make our communities better and safer. They also oversee in Watts a Safe Passage Patrol program, which monitors routes to and from the park, schools, and recreation facilities. I also want to highlight a couple of very successful community engagement and outreach programs that were created and implemented in Watts. First, the Domestic Violence Program, which provides domestic violence response and services to residents of the 5 housing developments. And then there's also the Children Exposed to Gun Violence Program, a team that responds to shots fired calls when children are present. I also want to recognize our partners in funding this is the Housing Authority, represented here by Eric Brown and John King. Let's give them a round of applause. We thank you. We love you. Doug Guthrie, thank you so much for your And also, if I may recognize those representing us in Watts, Captain Louis Pagnolaga, Lieutenant Gina Brooks, Officer Francisco Ilazarazas, Officer Ron Harrell, Officer Carlina Ortiz, Officer Marzan, and here with us today. We cannot forget the nearly 40 others who are involved in this program that couldn't be with us today because they are out in the field. So, colleagues, if we want to see our violent crime continue to go down, we have to look at sending this Community Safe Partnership program citywide. And the only way we can do that is to get more officers and hire more officers to do just that. There's no other way. We need at least 2,000 more cops on the street to not only address the violent crime, property crimes, but to also embrace the relationship-based policing. This is the only way we can do this citywide. So I'm happy to help lead that effort and lead that dialogue. And I'll end with this, Marquise. Last week, we welcomed 4,000 municipal leaders from the National League of Cities City Summit. And they had a firsthand opportunity, about 500 of them, to witness firsthand the Community Safety Partnership program here in Watts. And we hope and pray that they can take this same program to their respective cities so they too can reduce violent crime, build on relationship-based policing, and show the heart behind the badge, because that's how effective we've been here, and we hope to go nationwide with it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Buscaino. And now, representing the 9th District, Councilmember Curran Price.
Thank you, Councilman Marquise Harris Dawson. Thank you for putting together such an important presentation. Appreciate the words from my colleague, Joe Buscaino. At this time, it's important because we get to say something positive about something being done in South LA. I share Councilman Dawson's sentiments on how important and vital CSP has been to the communities that we serve. I'm fortunate to have two existing CSP programs operating in the 9th District, one at Avalon Gardens and the other at Pueblo del Rio Housing Development. Prior to the implementation of CSP, at both of these problems, communities were overburdened with fear and violence. However, once CSP was introduced in both of these developments, the quality of life improved dramatically, and no longer did residents feel scared to walk out of their doors. Not only do these programs allow dedicated officers focusing on community policing, but it provides programming that engages youth through recreational activities. And we've heard of the team sports that have been very effective and very popular. Efforts such as these only happen through partnerships and collaborations. And so I, too, want to thank HACLA, as well as LAPD Newton Division, Captain Rimkus, Sergeant Stokeleen, and, of course, Lieutenant Armada, and the team of men and women in blue who are committed to community policing. We appreciate you and we need you. It's through these sorts of partnerships that CSP not only improves upon the quality of life in our community, but it builds better police and community relations. And it's my hope that, as my colleagues have said, we can expand this program throughout the city. So without further ado, Councilman, I'd like to present the certificate to Pueblo del Rio's CSP. We're going to do that later? Okay.
We got a lot of them.
We got a lot to do, and I'm just happy to be here with you. Let's get it going.
All right. Thank you so much. One more time for Councilmember Price. All of these programs require leadership and leadership in the police department. Chief Beck stepped up very early on to be a champion of the Community Safety Partnership program. Chief Moore, after him, certainly has taken the baton and continues to run and push and help expand the program. And their point person for us and for all of these programs is our own Deputy Chief Arcos. And I want to invite him forward to see if... I'm so sorry, sir. Assistant Chief Arcos. Let's give him a big round of applause.
Good morning, Council President and honorable council members. Thank you on behalf of Chief Michael Moore. I'd like to thank you for the recognition and acknowledgement of our amazing community safety partnership teams throughout the city. A big thank you to Councilmember Buscaino, Councilmember Harris Dawson, and Councilmember Curran Price for the acknowledgement again and recognition of our officers. If I could, at this point, have our community safety partnership officers please stand and be recognized. Thank you. I just want to acknowledge they represent Ramona Gardens, Pueblo del Rio, Harvard Park, Nickerson Gardens, Jordan Downs, Imperial Courts, Avalon Gardens, and Gonzague Village. 8 community safety partnerships today. And I really must also acknowledge the work of our former Chief of Police, Charlie Beck, and former Chief of Operations South Bureau, Pat Gannon, Ms. Connie Rice, and executives of Housing Development who sat in a room and said, let's think differently about how this can work. And they asked the most amazing question, and they said, what if? And this is the product of what if. Today, to my right, what you're looking at is community policing. What you're looking at is community engagement at its best, and we are better for it. When we have this position of looking at how do we reduce crime, the answer has always been, let's build trust first. Let's build trust in our communities and we'll reduce crime. And every single one of these men and women are doing that every single day, from football teams to folklorico, to scouting, to field trips, to trips on the beach, to the mountains, wherever they go, they are engaged. And that is the crime fighter and the solution for us. And I'm so proud that we are moving forward and taking this model outside the housing developments and placing it into the city. San Fernando Gardens next up, South Park next up. Let's keep doing this. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your leadership. And I also want to acknowledge the captains, Chief Scott and Commander Flores, who are behind me today. They're the leadership that makes this happen. Thank you very, very much again for this honor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Assistant Chief Arcos, for those comments. We've got a few certificates to hand out, but I just wanted to name a few people. First of all, we want to acknowledge the Ballmer Foundation because in Harvard Park, we needed someone to step up and help finance this experiment, and the Ballmer Foundation stepped up and did that, and they are the reason that the City of Los Angeles is able to have a CSP program outside of a housing development, so we're very grateful to them. Of course, the inimitable Amada Tingarides, Chief Cato in South Bureau, Captain Ramirez, Sergeant Toscano, where's... There he is. Yeah. You could always find him in Harvard Park, either on the basketball court or racing someone on the track. Our park director, Austin Dumas. We have neighborhood council stakeholders. Ms. Pace is with us today. Eric Batch from the American Heart Association as well, Chapter 2. As well as a host of other community leaders. And before I end, I want to make sure we acknowledge the folks from Ramona Gardens. If you all can stand up, we want to acknowledge the Ramona Gardens crew. There they are. Your council member, Councilmember Huizar, asked us to make sure that we give you guys a big shout out and a big recommendation because you all are doing an equally good job over in Ramona Gardens. And so with that, we have certs to present, Mr. President, unless there are any other comments.
Go right ahead.
All right. So I've got Harvard Park and I've got Ramona Gardens, if you all can come up. Our Harvard Park team and our Ramona Gardens team.
Jordan Downs, Nickerson Gardens, Avalon Gardens, Gonzague, and Imperial Courts. Please come forward. Give them a round of applause, colleagues.
And we have a cert also for the Pueblo del Rio Community Safety Partnership. Pueblo del Rio.
Thank you all, City Council, and thank you, Chambers, so much. One more time, big round of applause for the Community Safety Partnership.
Thank you all so very much. Thank you for your service.
Follow the council member and the staff. Everybody this way to the back room for some additional photos. Collect all your belongings. You'll be exiting on the back. Go ahead and just come this way for me, please. Thank you. Yeah. Anybody who's part of this presentation, you're welcome to go ahead and follow the council member to the back. Yeah, let's try and get some of the friends and family though who weren't able to get some seats to come over here. I think that's next. Well, he's already doing that. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Perfect. Any of the other friends and families for the veterans? If we want to, we bring them over here. Yeah. Can I fill in one more?
Okay, I'd like to recognize Mr. Paul. It's either Mr. Herman or Mr. Spindler. Please do not disrupt. This is not your time. I'm going to call you up to speak later, so I don't expect to hear any disruption from you now. If so, you'll be removed from these chambers. So, Mr. Krikorian, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and good morning, colleagues. As you all know, Sunday marked the 100th anniversary of the armistice ending the war that would end all wars. Of course, it didn't. And because of that, we have adopted this, what used to be Armistice Day now, as a day of celebration of our veterans, as Veterans Day, because we know that despite the horrendous experience of World War I, we've had to continue to stand vigilant for democracy since then, and the people that we're honoring today have been our heroes who have done that in the century that has ensued since that date. In Washington and in state capitals and in town squares throughout our country, we have majestic monuments to great military and political leaders who have bent the arc of history. But Veterans Day reminds us that all of those grand achievements by the famous are made possible by those whose name history does not mark. The grocers and mail carriers, the nurses and teachers, the students and mechanics who were asked by their country to rise to the occasion, and they did. They were ordinary Americans who could have stayed home and lived a comfortable life with their families and friends, like most Americans, but instead they answered our country's call and stepped up to serve a greater cause. Every American who has donned the uniform of the United States Armed Forces in peacetime and in war has gained an honored place in the long and strong chain of sacrifice that connects one generation of ordinary American heroes to the next. It's a chain that began when the farmers of Concord put aside their pitchforks and picked up their muskets and forced the king's troops to retreat at the North Bridge. It's a chain whose links extended through Valley Forge, through Gettysburg, through Belleau Wood, through Okinawa and Incheon and Khe Sanh and Fallujah and Kandahar. And it's a chain that includes all those who stood watch in peacetime as well. And each of you veterans here today, and every other American who has ever formed a link in that chain across all the wars and all the generations, each of you has played an essential part in building the nation that we love. Over the course of our history, the threats to our country have changed and the missions of our armed forces have changed, but the valor, the dignity, and the courage of the men and women in uniform remain constant, and so does the strength of their families who sacrifice along with them. Each of them in each generation has left a legacy of freedom, and by their example, they taught their children and their children's children the value of sacrifice and devotion and service and love of country. We owe them a debt which we can never fully repay, but which we must always strive to repay. We owe them our respect, of course.
Hold on, Mr. Krikorian. Mr. Spindler, Ms. Sargents, I already warned him. Could you remove Mr. Spindler? He is purposely disturbing by walking back and forth behind Mr. Krikorian, and I'm not going to have that today during this very important presentation, so I would like to have him removed immediately. This is not a joke, and we take this very seriously. And he's continuing, Mr. City Attorney, we are continuing to be disrupted by Mr. Wayne Spindler, who obviously has absolutely no respect for anyone.
Mr. President, it's in fact ironic that just as I was speaking about the respect that we owe, a member of the public shows no respect for the very people who fought for his right to be able to speak. And the complete rejection of that sacrifice and lack of respect is appalling. So thank you very much, Mr. President, for dealing with that situation.
Well said, Mr. Krikorian. Please continue.
As I was saying, we owe these veterans our respect, but our respect is not enough. We also owe them decent health care and jobs and education. We need to end veteran homelessness, and we need to help all of our veterans heal their wounds, both seen and unseen. Above all else, we owe them our commitment to dedicate ourselves to the never-finished work of building a nation that continues to be worthy of their sacrifice. All of those who've served remind us of the extraordinary potential of ordinary Americans. They remind us of the principles for which our country stands, and they remind us of the courage and commitment necessary to maintain those principles. They remind us of both the blessings we enjoy and the costs we must bear as citizens of the last best hope of the earth. And Mr. President, it is one of the great moments of the year for this City Council when we have an opportunity to say thank you to these extraordinary veterans that we're about to recognize, one from each council district across our city, as we do every year. And
let's give them a round of applause, Mr. Krikorian, and all that are here. Sergeants, now you can remove Mr. Herman as well. Mr. Herman, who is disrupting. Mr. Herman, let's get him removed. No, would you just get him out of here, please? Mr. City Attorney, again, you can see that we are being disrupted by Mr. Herman.
As usual, he's shouting as he leaves, preventing us from.
Now, Mr. Sergeants, make sure he is removed. And the sad thing about it, he alleges that he's a veteran as well. All right, Mr. Krikorian. In fact, guys, let's forget about that. Let's give him one more round of applause. Thank you all so very, very much for your service to our great nation. Mr. Krikorian.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. So we're going to have an opportunity to hear some extraordinary stories today. Stories about military service, but also stories about community service. Stories about giving and sacrifice and continuing to, as I said earlier, build the nation that we all hope is worthy of these sacrifices. And I think you're going to hear that in the stories that each of our members are going to be sharing today. And I'd like to start off, if I may, Mr. President, by recognizing the Veteran of the Year for Council District 2. I'm delighted to, and Jack, can you join me? Can you join me up here? I'm proud to recognize Jack Rogo as Council District 2's Veteran of the Year. Let's give a hand to Jack. So, Mr. President, Mr. Rogo was born in Boston in 1921, moved to Los Angeles with his family at the age of 10, and after graduating from Belmont High in 1940, Jack enlisted in the Navy. He enlisted in 1940. We all know what happened in 1941. Little did he know he would soon be a witness to history. Jack finished his basic training in San Diego and began his service aboard the USS Bridge, a cargo ship that delivered food and other perishables. His next assignment was as a storekeeper at the supply depot at Naval Air Station Ford Island in the center of Pearl Harbor. At the time, an assignment in Hawaii seemed like a pretty choice job. Getting to be stationed in Hawaii during peacetime was something that everybody wanted to do. But on the morning of December 7th, 1941, Jack entered the mess hall and sat down for breakfast when he first heard the rumbling of aircraft, thinking that that was just a routine training maneuver like they heard a lot at Pearl Harbor. But on that infamous day, of course, as we now know, the rumbling of those planes were from the Japanese forces that attacked Pearl Harbor on that day, tragically killing 2,403 Americans and wounding 1,178 more. After the second wave of the attack, Jack and his fellow servicemen were scrambling into action and helped to pull the wounded sailors out of the water to render aid. Jack still vividly remembers the explosion of the USS Arizona, which he described as a cacophonous sound that's very, very difficult for anyone to comprehend who didn't experience it. The surprise attack on American lives at Pearl Harbor was, of course, a profound shock to Jack and to our entire country, and it became the catalyst for America's entry into World War II. Jack climbed the ranks after that as a naval officer, achieving the rank of Chief Petty Officer, and his duties included managing the division that handled repair and replacement of warplanes on board aircraft carriers. He met his wife, Winifred, who was a corporal in the Marine Corps, while they were both in the service. They married in New York City before the war ended in 1944, and after his service ended in 1946, they returned to Los Angeles, where Jack and Winifred bought a new house on Beck Avenue in North Hollywood, and Jack still lives in that house. They bought that in 1947. In 1950, Jack enrolled in the UCLA Extension School for accounting classes and eventually became a CPA, opening his own accounting practice, and he served many well-known clients in Los Angeles before he retired in 2015. Perhaps one of his most important clients, for our purposes, was Council President John Ferraro. And when Jack asked John Ferraro why he would hire a UCLA guy when he could have a USC graduate as his accountant, Ferraro said, "Because I didn't want them knowing all of my business." But President Ferraro trusted Jack. And retirement hasn't slowed Jack down in any way. He continues to live a very active life. He went skydiving at 88, and he got a tattoo of a safety pin because, as he put it, at this age, you need something to hold you together. Jack's been an active member of the Pearl Harbor Survivors Association Burbank chapter, but sadly that association is getting smaller and smaller with each year. And Jack is one of the last surviving witnesses to what this country experienced at Pearl Harbor, and we hope that he'll be able to continue to be a witness for many, many years to come. He still rows 1,000 meters every morning, so he's in good health, and he uses his experience to share with high school students, with Boy Scout troops, with many other young people who don't really have the same sense of our country's history and legacy, perhaps, that generations before have had. But because of Jack, they get to witness it firsthand, in person, and hear his stories about our country. So thank you, Jack, for your service to our country in the military and your unwavering dedication to our country ever since and to our community in North Hollywood. It gives me great pride to be able to recognize you as Council District 2's Veteran of the Year. All right. Thank you, Mr. President. So I'd like next to offer the opportunity to Councilmember Gil Cedillo to introduce his Veteran of the Year for Council District 1. Councilmember Cedillo.
Mr. Krikorian, you've been typically eloquent this morning, and I want to thank you for that. Of course, I cannot start any conversation about veterans without making a reference to my father. I keep his picture right here at my desk, and I'm very proud of him, and he was very proud of his service, and it's part of the tradition of the household that I come from. I also want to say to you, Mr. Krikorian, that there is this ceremony, and it is deserved, but the true way to honor veterans is, as you pointed out, is to ensure that they have the quality health care that their conditions require, that they are given an opportunity to further their education, and that they should all have an opportunity to work. And that finally, that in this great city, we cannot achieve our ultimate greatness if there is one veteran sleeping in the streets of the city. And so that each and every day we should work to make sure that there is housing, quality housing, for our veterans. That is the way for us to honor them. We should commit ourselves to those objectives each and every day, and we should never stop until those objectives are resolved. My father, a product of the 82nd Airborne, as he would say, all the way. So let me take a moment here now to focus on Regina Scott, LA Deputy Chief. Extraordinary life. The department is very fortunate to have her presence and her leadership. Good morning. She comes to us from Orange, New Jersey, and after graduating from high school, she joined the Army as a combat medic and as a pharmacy technician. She has a bachelor's degree in organizational management and criminal justice from Ashford University, and she is a graduate of the West Point Leadership School, 2016 session of the FBI National Academy in Quantico, Virginia. What an honor it is for us to have you in our service.
Thank you.
Commander Scott was appointed to the LAPD on July 1987. During her tenure, she's held numerous positions and worked various assignments within the department as a police officer, field training officer, a senior lead officer, and sergeant. She also held positions in all advanced pay grades of the detective and lieutenant ranks. This year, Regina Scott was promoted to LAPD Deputy Chief, becoming the first African-American woman to hold the position. And in her spare time, she plays a few rounds of golf and strums up a little bit of blues on the guitar. Yes. We're so happy to have you, so honored. And yes, I got the cert. My staff is pushing me. Don't forget the cert. We're honored to have you. Thank you for coming by the office.
Thank you.
And let me just say that not just your community, but the whole community of Los Angeles is honored to have you in our service.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cedillo. Mr. President, I'd like to go next to Council District 3 and ask Councilmember Bob Blumenfield to recognize the Veteran of the Year for Council District 3.
All right. Megan's coming up right now to join me here. So this morning I am proud to recognize Maggie DeWan Smith as the 3rd Council District's Veteran Day honoree. Maggie. Now, she is a resident of Woodland Hills. She served for more than 27 years as a flight nurse in the Air Force Reserve. In her civilian life, she worked as a critical care nurse at UCLA. She has truly lived a life of service for her country and her community. I also want to give her special recognition for making it to City Hall this morning. During this past week, she was an evacuee of the Woolsey fire. In fact, unexpectedly, I ran into her at one of the evacuation sites at Pierce College. I was there touring and making sure they had all the supplies that they needed. And who do I run into but Maggie, my honoree for today? And I said to her, you don't need to come. You got bigger issues to worry about. But she said, no, assuming fire doesn't get worse and now you're able to get back to your home, thank goodness, she wanted to be here. So I want to give her a special credit for making it despite the fires. Tell you a little bit about her. She grew up in Ohio. Her favorite bedtime stories were her father's tales of his time as an Army attorney in Europe involved in the war crimes trials as a prosecutor and as a defender. And Maggie did not at first aspire to be in the military or even have a nursing career. She started out as a teen model and actress in Ohio and New York. But life changes sometimes. Her plans shifted. She earned her baccalaureate in nursing, became a certified nurse in critical care nursing, and eventually moved to LA, where she began working at UCLA's critical care unit. But working nights there, she heard the tales of serving in the Air Force Reserve, and there was a pull for service. She was already serving as a nurse, but she decided to enhance that. In 1982, she was commissioned as a second lieutenant, serving with the 68th Aeromedical Evacuation Squadron at Norton Air Force Base in San Bernardino. She qualified as a flight nurse in 1983, became an instructor flight nurse in 84, and later becoming the officer in charge of training. And then, in 1990, during Desert Shield, Desert Storm, she was mobilized and deployed. She flew for 16 years, achieving senior flight nurse and chief flight nurse status, accumulating over 1,200 flight hours. In 1998, she went on full-time active duty. And while assigned to the Air Force Surgeon General's office, she helped create the Nurse Enlisted Commissioning Program, NECP. Under this program, enlisted personnel who had completed their first year of nursing were assigned for the next 3 years to complete a baccalaureate nursing degree. And the program pays for nursing schools, provides an avenue for an officer commission, and helps ease the national nursing shortage. So not only was she doing the work, she was thinking ahead and creating these amazing programs. The final assignment of her military career combined her clinical, administrative, and educational skills, and she helped plan a new cardiothoracic ICU at Travis Air Force Base. So this is someone who does the work, who thinks strategically, and who has really helped advance safety in our military. She retired from the Air Force Reserve as a lieutenant colonel, and since retiring from the Air Force and UCLA, she's active in veterans and media entertainment and relishes her adventures and is returning back to acting. And I'm sure we're going to see her on the silver screen pretty soon doing a big movie. She continues to serve the community as well as a volunteer tutor at UCLA in the course that she actually helped create, a course for medical and advanced practice nursing students. Maggie DeWan Smith, you're an amazing person, and we thank you for your service.
Thank you, Mr. Blumenfield. And Mr. President, next I'd like to ask Councilmember David Ryu to introduce the Veteran of the Year for Council District 4. Councilmember Ryu.
Thank you, Councilman Koretz. Krikorian. Sorry.
That happens all the time.
They're used to it by now, Mr. Rue.
Thank you, Councilmember Krikorian, for organizing this event today and honoring our veterans today and every Veterans Day to celebrate the many Angelenos who served our great country. Today, I am humbled and honored to recognize Military Police Unit member, Purple Heart recipient, and Los Angeles police officer David Anaya. Come on. A native Angeleno, Officer David Anaya was born in Northeast Los Angeles and heard the call to serve his community at an early age. At just 17 years old, when he was between his junior and senior year of high school, Anaya joined the U.S. Army Reserve. He was a member of the Military Police Battalion, where he received his first deployment to Iraq in 2007. Shortly after returning from his first tour, David applied to join the ranks of the LAPD. But less than a year after becoming a Los Angeles police officer in 2009, Officer Anaya was called back to active service with the U.S. Army and deployed to Afghanistan. As a member of the military police unit, David's job was to train and mentor Afghani police forces in the Khost province, working alongside these brave local police forces in the rural areas of the eastern border of Afghanistan. It was there, while on foot patrol, that David Anaya and his troops were approached by a man in a suicide vest. The man was kidnapped and his family's lives were being threatened to gain his compliance. And as he approached Mr. Anaya's unit, his suicide vest was remotely detonated by terrorists. This coordinated ambush continued as sniper fire rained down on their unit from nearby hillsides, and several U.S. service members, including Mr. Anaya, were injured in this attack. And tragically, 2 Afghani police officers were killed. For his courage and service in Afghanistan, Mr. Anaya was awarded a Purple Heart and the Global War on Terrorism's Expeditionary Medal. Mr. Anaya returned home to Los Angeles and joined the Hollywood Division in 2014, where he continues to serve. He is joined today by his wife, Heather, and I am honored to stand with him today, recognize his courage, his leadership, and his heroism, and thank him from the bottom of my heart for continued service to our country and to our city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rue. And Mr. President, I'd like to now ask Councilmember Paul Koretz. That's Paul Koretz. Just Mr. Rue, Paul Koretz. So I'd like to ask Councilmember Paul Koretz to introduce the Veteran of the Year for Council District 5. Mr. Koretz.
Well, thank you, Mr. Krikorian, and thank you for doing this event so we can recognize our heroes who are veterans. Today I'm privileged to honor Ara Papazian, who is here with me today. At 21 years old, he was drafted into the Army and served from October 6, 1966 through October 1968 during the Vietnam era. After basic training, Ara went to Brooke Army Medical Hospital in San Antonio, Texas, where he was trained as a combat medic. Following his service, he returned to his home city of Washington, D.C., and married his wife, Marie, and they had 3 children, Garo, Armin, and Rita, and continued to serve his community and church. He is one of the founding members of the Armenian National Committee in Washington, D.C., and at the same time, he became a State Farm insurance agent, which he still is today. He has an impressive volunteer record, including working on local election campaigns and serving as chairman of the Valley Armenian National Committee. A man of faith, he has served as a member of the board of directors of his church for the last 30 years. Time in the armed services has taught him how precious life and health is, and to that end, he has made sure that his children and grandchildren continue to serve the community in any ways they can. Ara, thank you for your service, both as a Vietnam veteran and an important member of our community in Council District 5.
Thank you very much, Mr. Koretz. Mr. President, Councilmember Martinez could not be here today. She asked me to recognize the Veteran of the Year for Council District 6, Nolan Haltom. On behalf of Councilmember Martinez, I'm proud to recognize Nolan Haltom, who is a Vietnam War combat veteran, a resident of Van Nuys, who initially served in the Navy as a combat medic in 1967. And then he served with the United States Marine Corps, 1st Platoon, 1st Marine Division, the Big Red One, in service near Da Nang, Vietnam. He served his country with the Marines until 1968. 1970. We don't want to leave you 2 years short. He served his country until 1970. I apologize, and continues to serve his country even after that as well, I should note. Since his service, Nolan has honored his identity as both a veteran and a member of the LGBTQ community. He has served as the Community Outreach Chair for the Greater Los Angeles chapter of American Veterans for Equal Rights, and he's been an outstanding volunteer for OutServe, Service Members Legal Defense Network, which is dedicated to providing legal assistance to LGBTQ service members and veterans. After moving to Van Nuys from Silver Lake, Nolan became an active member in the community. He's the area captain for the Northwest Van Nuys Neighborhood Watch Group. He works closely with Councilwoman Martinez's office, and he's truly their eyes and ears in his neighborhood. He's been a committed ally in helping Councilmember Martinez fight human trafficking and promoting public safety, from homelessness, prostitution, suspicious activity, traffic patterns, etc. The council office knows exactly what's going on day to day, thanks to Nolan's extensive effort. We'd also like to thank and recognize his partner, Michael, his daughter, Kate, and his 2 grandchildren who are here with us today as well. Thank you to his entire family for sharing Nolan with the Van Nuys community while he puts in countless hours to make things better for the community, for veterans, and for members of the LGBTQ community. I'm proud to recognize Nolan as Council District 6's
Where's his family? Have them stand up. Where are they? That's okay, we'll wait. Yeah. Thank you guys for coming to that.
All right. Next, I'd like to ask Councilmember Monica Rodriguez to recognize the Veteran of the Year for Council District 7.
Thank you so much, Mr. Krikorian. And to all of the veterans, I want to say my deepest and sincerest gratitude for your service. I, too, am the daughter of a veteran. My father served in the combat in Vietnam. And to those of you that served in Vietnam, I do want to welcome you home today. Thank you so much for your incredible service. Today I am joined by a very special member of the 7th Council District and someone that I've had the great privilege of knowing for, I think, about half my life. He is none other than Robert Estrada. And Mr. Estrada is very special for so many reasons. One, he is also the father to some very dear friends of ours that we had the benefit of growing up with in the San Fernando Valley, and also happens to be the Nino to my husband. But Robert Estrada was born on May 28, 1940, in the city of San Fernando. He served in the United States Army in the 1st, 3rd, and 7th Divisions and was a specialist in the 4th, 8th, and 10th Cavalry, tracks, and tanks reconnaissance. He completed basic training in Fort Ord, California, then shipped off to Fort Knox, Kentucky, Fort Lewis, Washington, and then Korea. After being stationed in Korea, he returned to Fort Riley in Kansas. He served from April 1959 to May 1962, which he likes to refer to as precisely, he served 3 years, 15 days, and 15 minutes. After returning from service, he completed college and became an aerospace engineer. His second biggest accomplishment was working on the components for the tip of the space shuttle, his children, of course, being his first. Robert resides in Sylmar and is active in the veterans community and attends monthly meetings and continues to be of service in support of the San Fernando Valley branch of veterans. He is the proud father of 4 children, Veronica, Teresa, Robert Jr., and David. And today we are joined by his daughter, Teresa, his son, Robert Jr., also affectionately known as Bobby, granddaughter, Viviana, and his wife, Norma. And, you know, one of the other little tidbits, everyone that knows Bob knows that he's quite a character. He's a card, and he's always just been a lot of fun. And growing up, there was always our share of laughs with Bob. But, you know, my husband wanted me to remind one of his favorite lines about you that you used to say was that you were the best boxer in the San Fernando Valley. You could box oranges like no one else. And also that apparently when using clippers on my husband's hair, that he broke them. There was just a lot of fun stories that we had growing up with Bob, but I think what's really special about Bob is his continued service to our community and representing the best of the Northeast San Fernando Valley. We have so many incredible treasures of individuals, men and women of our community that have stepped up and taken that call to service. And Bob is just one of those very special reminders in our community who continues to be active in service, that we are so in debt to your continued service to our community, and we are all better for knowing you. And I am proud to have here my 7th District honoree today, Robert Estrada.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. And I'd like to turn next to Councilmember Marquise Harris Dawson, who will recognize the Veteran of the Year for the 8th Council District.
Thank you so much, Mr. Krikorian, and my heartfelt appreciation to you for creating this platform and calling attention to the issue, and to the people who, almost like no one else, put their bodies on the line for the cause of the American experiment in the American dream. That is a gift and a sacrifice that very few of us make, and so we want to lift that up as high as we can and honor it in the way that it deserves. Today, the 8th District Veteran of the Year is someone that we recognize posthumously. His name is Staff Sergeant First Class John Winston Marshall. Sergeant Marshall served in the United States military for 27 years. He comes from a military family, not unlike myself. His father and his grandfather before him. His mother, Odessa, was in fact a medical technician with the Women's Army Corps. She was one of the first African-American women to serve in the military at that time. Sergeant Marshall moved to South Los Angeles when he was 3 years old. He matriculated and graduated from George Washington Preparatory High School in 1971, after which he enlisted in the Army at the age of 18. In the 1980s, he was forced to take a leave of absence from the military to fight a battle against Hodgkin's lymphoma. 4 years later, this man is not a quitter. After conquering the cancer and going into full remission, he rejoined the United States Army. He retired in 2002 after many years of service. But those of you who remember that time, that was exactly 1 year before our second Iraq war. Sergeant Marshall enlisted again at the age of 50 after he was notified that some of the training that was needed for soldiers going to Iraq wasn't in high supply in the military, and so he rejoined the military to provide that training. He went to Iraq to go into battle with the 1st battalion that he had trained to take on this battle, and he was struck by an enemy rocket and became one of the first American casualties in the Iraq War. He did not make it out of the mission alive, but many and almost all of his trainees do. After his death in 2003, the Army recognized Sergeant Marshall's dedication and courage and awarded him the Silver Star and Purple Heart. He was laid to rest at the Arlington Cemetery in Virginia. After his passing, he received another honor, something that we're all very proud of, right across the street from my district office on Vermont and 82nd Street. We have the John W. Marshall Post Office there. We had planned to honor Sergeant Marshall for a couple of years, and we wanted to make sure we could get the family here and we could see their faces and see their smiles and see their pride in the contribution that their family member had made and the leadership that he had provided. And as we began to do that process, we realized that James, his brother, where's James? Oh, there he is. James's brother is also a veteran, and so he was an Army E4 specialist, and he has taken up the cause of his brother like no one else. I remember meeting you almost 10 years ago, and you came in my office and said, sign this petition, we want to rename the, you didn't think I remembered that, did you? Yeah. We want to rename the post office after my brother, and he told the story. He's very active in activism and community organizations throughout South Los Angeles, but most importantly, he reminds so many audiences that might forget the sacrifice of his brother and the sacrifice of so many men and women that are our neighbors that fight for freedom and the cause of the United States. And so our two Veterans of the Year, James and John Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. Harris Dawson. And Mr. President, next I'd like to ask Councilmember Curran Price to introduce to us the Veteran of the Year for Council District 9. Councilmember Price.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Krikorian, and thanks again to you and your staff for organizing this very special celebration that permits us all to just give thanks to individuals who have stepped up to the plate and who are really responsible for our freedom. I'd like to this weekend, across the country and throughout the world, we honored brave men and women for their tireless service to our country. We recognize their commitment to defend the freedoms we all cherish so deeply. To veterans from all walks of life, you are the epitome of the American dream. You are a true representation of hardship, sacrifice, and strength. But let's not forget, behind every brave vet stands a mother, a father, a wife, a husband, children, and friends who have contributed to the dedication of our service members. And for that, you are all heroes, and we salute you all. The city of LA is home to more than 90,000 veterans, many of whom are living in my district. And one that I'm pleased to honor today is the Honorable Michaela Montoya. Let's give it up for Michaela. She served in the California Army National Guard and the Army Reserves for 8 years, including a deployment to Iraq for 1 year as a military police officer. After returning to the U.S. from Iraq, she dedicated her time to raise public awareness for the lack of services available to female veterans. She went on to appear on multiple national and international media outlets, such as The Oprah Winfrey Show, CNN, Fox News, LA Times, LA World News with Diane Sawyer. In addition, she's featured in the book, The Lonely Soldier, which received an extraordinary amount of community and media support and won the Exceptional Merit in Media Award. To pursue her vision, providing access, awareness to services tailored for all veterans, she currently is the outreach coordinator for the United States Department of Veterans Affairs. Michaela, again, thank you for continuing to inspire others and to leaving a lasting footprint in history. She's joined by her son, her daughter, and proud husband, and a cute little one. So, again, Michaela, thank you, congratulations, and we are so proud of you and your service to our country.
Thank you, Mr. Price. And President Wesson, if you'd be kind enough to recognize the Veteran of the Year for Council District 10.
Thank you. And if I could get you guys to stand up and get a little closer. Before I recognize my Veteran of the Year. I want to thank Mr. Krikorian for making sure that we do this every year. I want to say to each and every veteran from the bottom of my heart, I personally appreciate your service. I have never gone to bed ever in my 67 years and been afraid that some other country was going to invade our nation. I have driven up and down these streets throughout this country and just been safe knowing that so many of you were sacrificing your life to ensure that my family and I were safe. So thank you so much. Let's give all of our veterans a round of applause. Those that are here with us today and those that are not. Today, Mr. Krikorian and members, I celebrate Margaret Bush Ware, a dear friend of mine and the executive director of the California Council for Veteran Affairs. She's this stylish one to my right. But she brought with her LaShonda Gill, who I believe is Army, Maria Hunt, who I believe is Navy. Can we give them a round of applause? The California Council of Veteran Affairs has been around since 1974. And for the last few years around this horseshoe, members, we've talked about bridge housing and permanent supportive housing for the last few years. This organization, led by Margaret, has been working on this for decades. In particular, providing services. When you think of transitional housing, that is permanent supportive housing with services for the individuals that reside there. Bridge housing, where people stay 90 to 120 days until they can be placed in more permanent supportive housing. Margaret runs the day-to-day operation with probably 85 to 90% of her work is out raising money so that she can ensure that our veterans, our female veterans, and their family are provided for. And it's one thing for us to honor our veterans, but we have a responsibility to provide services for them when they are out of the service because they've made the ultimate sacrifice. Miss Bush Ware was at one point in time a public relations person and for the Columbia Record family, where she worked directly for Clive Davis. She handled entertainers like Sammy Davis Jr., Della Reese, Cicely Tyson, and more. At one point in her life, she was recognized as one of the most outstanding women in America, recognized as one of the most influential African Americans in Southern California, and also was listed in the who's who of fundraising. And so that I don't go home and get beat up by my wife, she is also a member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority. So I should be able to go home. So let's give Margaret and LaShonda and Maria a round of applause. We appreciate you. We thank you for your service.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Next up, I'd like to ask Councilmember Mike Bonin to recognize our Veteran of the Year for Council District 11. Councilmember Bonin.
Thank you, Mr. Krikorian. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for doing this. Before I start, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge a veteran who's not here. One of the victims of the shooting in Thousand Oaks the other day was a 33-year-old Marine veteran, Daniel Manrique, who had been an outreach worker for homeless veterans for the St. Joseph Center in Venice, and had recently left to go work for Team RWB, Team Red, White, and Blue. I just want to remember him today specifically. And now I'd like to honor my honoree for Council District 11, First Lieutenant Jen Levita, an airborne-rated Army Air Artillery officer, a veteran who spent 4 years leading soldiers, flying a blimp, I understand, and jumping out of airplanes before following her heart out west here to Los Angeles. She grew up just outside of Boston in Peabody, not far from where I grew up, spending some long winters and some happy summers in New England. And then she joined Army ROTC while she was attending Syracuse University in New York. She wanted to challenge herself physically and mentally, and ultimately she wanted to do something that was greater than herself. After graduating with a bachelor's degree in advertising design, she joined the U.S. Army, and she served as an air defense artillery officer for 4 years, from 2009 to 2013. And in that job, she helped manage modern, complicated military computers on complex networks, communication systems, and radar to provide warning, detection, and protection for our armed forces at risk from aerial attack, missile attack, or aerial surveillance. From 2009 to 2011, she was a platoon leader in Utah and also served as an executive officer there. And from 2011 to 2013, she worked in a unit that trained basic soldiers in air defense at Fort Sill Base in Lawton, Oklahoma. When she left the Army in 2013, she was ranked as a first lieutenant, and she moved here to the west side of Los Angeles, moved around a few places, and now she's in the Mar Vista Del Rey neighborhood, not far from me. She owns Grandview Fine Art Studio, where she regularly shows work and hosts live art paintings. She's a participating artist at the Mar Vista Art Walk, and she joined other artists to help beautify our CD11 Great Streets with one of the painted utility boxes on our corners. It was originally painted as Carrie Fisher as Princess Leia to pay tribute to women who'd passed. She recently repainted it to depict Amy Winehouse. She's also part of the U.S. Veterans Artist Alliance, which I had in here just before our break, honoring them and veterans who participate in the arts and humanities and entertainment. She's also part of the Night Owl Players, which is a group of Mar Vista area musicians, painters, and poets that have shows around L.A. and perform private events. She describes these performances as something you've never seen before and a great reason to enjoy a night out, so let me know when the next one is coming up. She's also active with the Women Painters West, a nonprofit membership corporation that supports artistic and professional growth. She works with acrylics and watercolors, mainly focusing on painting and inspiration and beauty in the world around us, as well as animals and sea life. She creates murals and custom paintings for clients, and she does live painting as a form of performance art. Her goal is to create more beauty in the world and to inspire positivity. I want to thank her for her service to our country for 4 years in the Army. I want to thank her for bringing more Massachusetts to Los Angeles. And I want to thank you for your dedication to the arts and to the community and constantly giving back. So it's my honor to introduce you today to First Lieutenant Jen Levita.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bonin. Mr. President, Mr. Englander could not be with us today, so it's my honor to be able to recognize the Veteran of the Year for Council District 12, and I'd like to ask Colonel McDonald to join me. I'm honored to recognize Lieutenant Colonel James McDonald, the Council District 12 Veteran of the Year. Lieutenant Colonel James E. McDonald is the commander, 129th Security Forces Squadron of Moffett Air National Guard Base in California. As Defense Forces Commander, he's responsible for the security, law enforcement, anti-terrorism, force protection, and integrated defense of the Air Force Base. Additionally, he's responsible for organizing, training, equipping, and maintaining combat-ready security forces units for rapid deployment in support of both federal and state missions. Lieutenant Colonel McDonald enlisted in the California Air National Guard in 1987 and commissioned through the Academy of Military Science in 2001. He's served in many positions at the flight, squadron, group, and California Military Department level, including Maintenance Group Executive Officer, Logistics Readiness Officer, Disaster Response Representative for the State of California and FEMA Region 9, Force Support Flight Commander, and Security Forces Squadron Commander. In 2007, he deployed as a Security Forces Flight Commander for the 506th Air Expeditionary Security Forces Squadron, in charge of 155 Security Forces members and augmentees overseeing all entry and exit of Kirkuk Air Base in Iraq. He was involved in exercises like Key Resolve and Ulchi Freedom Guardian in 2017 in South Korea. And he has, as you can see on his chest, more awards than can be mentioned. They take a half a page on my list. When you're a lieutenant colonel and you've served this long and you've served so nobly as the colonel has, you build up a lot of hardware. But that's reflective of his service in the Iraq campaign, the global war on terrorism, and nuclear deterrence operations with distinction. Lieutenant Colonel McDonald was also named Officer of the Year for the California Air National Guard and the Air National Guard in 2007 and 2008, respectively. In 2014, when he completed a Master of Military Operational Art and Science with concentration in joint warfare from the Air University in Maxwell Air Force Base, Lieutenant Colonel McDonald received the Air Force Surgeons Award for Master's Program Research Thesis. So, as you can see, Colonel McDonald has had a stellar military career, serving our country in the military and in disaster response, but that wasn't enough. Because in addition to that level of service, Colonel McDonald is also Sergeant McDonald with the Los Angeles Police Department, where he continues to serve us and our communities bravely each and every day as a Sergeant of Police for the Los Angeles Police Department. So thank you, Lieutenant Colonel McDonald, for your extraordinary service to our country and to our city, for your unwavering dedication to all of our neighbors and community members. I'm very proud to be able to recognize on behalf of Councilmember Englander to recognize you as Council District 12's Veteran of the Year.
You know, my family couldn't make it because they're all in the Air Force in Alaska. My wife's in Oregon. My son's in Alaska. My daughter's in Las Vegas, Nevada. So we're everywhere.
I just needed to share that, if you don't mind. Colonel McDonald's family would love to have been here to join him, but they are all serving on duty with the armed forces right now in various parts of the world. All right, Mr. President, I'd like to now call upon Councilmember Mitchell O'Farrell to recognize the Veteran of the Year for Council District 13. Councilmember.
Thank you, Mr. Krikorian, and I just want to personally thank you for hosting what is my favorite tradition, my favorite yearly tradition on this council. I think that there are very few things that we can do that are more important than thanking those who have sacrificed everything for our freedoms that we enjoy. I come from a family of veterans on both sides of my family. My grandfathers, my father, cousins, nephews, great uncles. One of my grandmothers packed parachutes in Tulsa, Oklahoma for 3.5 years during World War II. I come from the tradition of victory gardens and the tradition of really valuing what those before us have sacrificed so that we may be able to reach our full potential. And it is in that spirit that I recognize my honoree this year, and none other than Gidget Hale, who has served in the United States Air Force. And colleagues, there's a theme. Gidget also is a member of the Los Angeles Police Department. And I would like to thank all of the inspirational members of the LAPD who have been represented today, and just say that Gidget Hale joined the United States Air Force in 2005 from her hometown in Colorado Springs. She attended basic training at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. After completing her military occupational specialty training
as a member of the security forces, Airman Hale, they don't say airwomen, Airman Hale, was stationed at Malmstrom Air Base in Montana. Airman Hale was part of the elite unit whose principal responsibility was to protect the silos and weaponry of our nation's nuclear defenses. In 2009, Senior Airman Hale separated from the Air Force to pursue college prior to joining the ranks of the LAPD in 2011. Police Officer 2 Hale is a member of Hollywood Division's core unit and dedicated to addressing the crises of homelessness, another theme that is present today. And I would like to just recognize Gidget Hale as my distinguished honoree as we celebrate our future and past veterans, but also acknowledge her colleagues, Captain Lurie of Hollywood Division and Sergeant French, who are here in support of Hale's recognition. Thank you so much and congratulations. There you go. Oh, here. Whoops. You also have some flowers.
Thank you, Thank you, Mr. O'Farrell. And Mr. President, on behalf of Councilmember Huizar, I'd like to introduce to you the Veteran of the Year for Council District 14, and I'd like to ask him to join me. This is Marcos Trinidad. Mr. Trinidad is an Army veteran who spent 3 years stationed in Germany as part of the 7th Army Training Command, the Army's largest overseas training command. Mr. Trinidad also served as a 19D Cavalry Scout, using his special training to obtain, distribute, and share vital combat and battlefield information on the enemy and environmental conditions. In addition to his military service, Marcos continues to serve and work toward a more environmentally inclusive Los Angeles. For 2 decades, Marcos has advanced diversity, equity, and inclusion in the environmental movement, including co-directing LA's Environmental Professionals of Color chapter. Through that chapter, through his work there, Marcos promoted and sponsored forums for people of color working in environmentally related careers. He was recognized by the North American Association for Environmental Education as the recipient of the Rosa Parks and Grace Lee Boggs Award in recognition of his leadership in environmental justice education and advocacy. Born and raised in Northeast Los Angeles, where his family has lived for 70 years, Marcos has deep roots in the community and has spent the last 4 years serving as the director of the Audubon Center at Debs Park. Prior to coming to Debs, Marcos served as director of Audubon Youth Environmental Stewards and as an urban forester, engaged in inspiring youth to connect to nature and to their community through restoration and volunteer projects all over Los Angeles County. Marcos loves to go bird watching with his 8-year-old daughter, Paloma, aptly named Paloma, and his 6-year-old son, Biha, along the LA River. He's a world traveler and feels most complete when he goes on extended camping trips with his beautiful family. Marcos is truly someone who has never stopped serving, whether it be his country or the people of Los Angeles and beyond, that he has worked to inspire to take on the fight of environmental preservation, appreciation, and sustainability. He is most deserving of this honor as the Council District 14 Veteran of the Year, Marcos Trinidad. Marcos, thank you very much for all your service. And Mr. President, if you would, I'd like to call upon you to recognize Councilmember Joe Buscaino, Council President Joe Buscaino,
Thank you,
for the recognition of the Council District 15 Veteran of the Year.
Thank you, Mr. Krikorian. The harbor area prides itself on a rich military history with our drum barracks in Wilmington, Fort MacArthur, San Pedro, and of course the battleship Iowa. I am proud to honor posthumously Private First Class Roger Gonzalez, whose incredible story was unveiled this year. We're honored to be here with Minnie Salceda, who is a sister of Roger Gonzalez, and Yolanda Garcia, niece of Roger Gonzalez, a Marine killed in Korea in 1950, whose body had not been positively identified until now. Born February 14th, 1930, he was the only son of Antonio and Anastasia Gonzalez at the time of his death. Roger was a San Pedro kid with Olympic dreams. He excelled as an athlete at San Pedro High School and was part of the track team and football team. The Korean War, which began on June 25th, 1950, was heating up, and by July, reservists were called in to meet the challenge. Roger and his cousin Freddy Gonzalez decided to join the United States Marine Reserves. They wound up in Fox Company, and Roger was assigned to assist fellow Marine Warren McClure, who carried a heavy Browning automatic rifle because of his athletic skills and strength. He was only 20 years old when he was killed in action just weeks after he arrived at the Battle of Chosin Reservoir in North Korea. The Marines, collectively numbering about 240, unexpectedly found themselves surrounded by an estimated 3,000 enemy troops that had crossed over from mainland China. Private First Class Roger Gonzalez was shot and killed emerging in a foxhole in the pre-dawn hours on November 29th, looking for his partner to supply him with more ammunition. The remains of 7,688 U.S. military personnel are still missing from the Korean War that lasted from 1950 to 1953. Most of those are believed to still be in North Korea. The remains of Private First Class Roger Gonzalez were among those handed over by the Korean People Army in September 1954 that had been recovered from the west side of the Chosin Reservoir. They were initially shipped to Japan and later to Hawaii, where they were buried together as unknowns in the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific, commonly known as the Punch Bowl. Thanks to technology and the painstaking work of the Defense POW-MIA Accounting Agency, making use of the DNA provided by his sister, Roger Gonzalez was positively identified on April 4th of this year. Now, while burial at a military cemetery would have been fully covered by the government, the family chose instead to bury Roger's remains at Green Hill Cemetery in Rancho Palos Verdes to satisfy his mother's wishes that should his remains ever be identified, he be laid to rest next to her. So thank you for joining us today in council. We honor your brother and your uncle, and it's with great honor that we do so today. Thank you, Mr. Krikorian.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And members, we will be posing momentarily with all of our Veterans of the Year for a group picture here. But before we bring this to a close, I would like to first acknowledge that Mr. Blumenfield spoke earlier about the victims of the fire. And I think it's worth noting that so many of the firefighters who are right now on the front lines and so many of the police officers who are responding to keep those neighborhoods safe are also veterans who have risked their own lives overseas and now continue to come back and risk their own life here in service as well. And Mr. President, I would like to, as we bring this presentation to a close, I would like to invite up one more honoree, a dear friend of mine, Nazali Elmasian, who I'd like to join me here at the podium. Nazali is a resident of Council District 10. She goes to church with me in Council District 4, so I can't exactly count her as a Council District 2 honoree, but I'm going to anyway. Nazali is the daughter of immigrants who came from the same part of the world as my family did to escape the Armenian genocide and the massacres that would precede it. She was born in Fresno. She moved to Los Angeles with her family at the age of 5. She enlisted in the United States Navy in World War II and served in the Navy Hospital Corps from 1944 to 1946. She was stationed at U.S. Naval Hospital in Corona, California, where she served as a highly trained medical corpsman and served as the primary medical caregiver for sailors and Marines returning from the Pacific. The responsibilities of the hospital corpsman can't be overstated. In World War II, corpsmen actually ran out of the landing crafts, hitting hot beaches right alongside of the Marines in every single battle that was fought. They served on thousands of ships and aboard submarines, and my dad, who served in the Pacific as a combat veteran of the Marine Corps, would often talk about the corpsmen and how they even had it worse than the people who were carrying guns, because they were out there often having to go into the line of fire to drag back people who've been wounded into foxholes and behind cover so that they could provide medical care. Thankfully, Nazli was not under fire, but she saved lives of sailors and Marines who were coming back from service at the Naval Hospital in Corona. And she and all of her fellow hospital corpsmen were absolutely essential both to the war effort and to the recovery of those who served in it. And of special note to the people in this chamber, I should also note that Nazli comes from a family of service. And her brother, Aram Elmasian, was known to many in this chamber. For 44 years, he served as an employee of the city and was deputy city clerk. He was actually responsible for the Planning Commission and overseeing the planning department, and was sitting in this chamber for decades working on some of the most difficult planning and land use issues that this council wrestled with in building the modern Los Angeles that we know today. In addition, like Nazli, he served in the military during World War II. He fought in France and in Germany. He was with the expeditionary force that landed at Normandy and earned a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart in service to our country. So it's my great privilege to recognize Nazli Elmasian, and in remembrance also of her brother Aram for their service to the United States military and the city of Los Angeles.
Give her a round of applause. Thank you.
And with that, Mr. President, as Nazli and I are taking a picture, perhaps we can bring the veterans up and members into the center for...
Let's do that. Let's give Mr. Krikorian another round of applause, his entire team for
could I
facilitating.
just say that
yes, the floor is yours.
Our family now has several of these. Aram got several. If he were here now, he'd be proud of his sister that she also has beautiful.
Thank you. He is here.
Yes.
Let us take a brief recess so we can take a group photo with all the honorees.
And as we do, let's take a moment to thank our Veterans of the Year and all of the veterans here in the chambers who've served our country in military service.
Thank you, Mr. Krikorian. We will now recess for a brief photo. Okay, let us bring ourselves back to session. Okay, let's now take item 18A. 18A is now before us.
And Mr. President, for the record, the motion has been posted and circulated for council's consideration.
18A is now before us. Open the vote. Close the vote. Tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That is approved. Item number 30. Item 30 is now before us. No one on the queue. Open the vote. Close the vote. Tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
30 is approved. Item now 27 is before us. Item number 27, I believe we have cards. Let's see. Valerie Hanley. Valerie Hanley for item number 27. Please come forward. Eric Previn. Mr. Previn will be followed by Vince Leos. Go ahead, floor is yours.
On what item?
27.
There's no multiple component?
We're just doing 27 at this point.
Okay, I'll address 27. Thank you. 27 is a rare item, and Mr. Cedillo was going to introduce it, but I guess I will. A neighborhood council voted to cede from its own neighborhood council, I guess, and have another neighborhood council. They were going to share Legion Park, but someone has decided that it was not kosher for the department, so they've asked to veto the activity that was taken by the local board. If I understand it correctly, it's tough because you guys are you're moving very quickly, and there's only one motion. So if you're not from that neighborhood, it's unclear. But we do take note that the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners are overseeing this stuff, and that I know that we would like to change our bylaws briefly before we vote in the middle of May 2019. And if you could help with that, sir. Obviously, we want to make sure everybody is reflecting what the community wants. And hopefully you're intervening here with a veto, if I have it right, or you're waiving the veto. I don't know. We'll find out, but thank you for your interest in city government.
Thank you. Vince Leos, please come forward. Good morning.
Hi, my name is Vince Leus, and I'm a resident of Victor Heights and a member of the Historic Cultural North Neighborhood Council Formation Committee. I wanted to just share that I joined this effort last year in November 2017 because I saw that our neighborhoods were rapidly changing and we needed a neighborhood council that could more effectively address the socioeconomic issues impacting our diverse communities. Over 3 months in the holiday season and all through to June, volunteers did outreach in English, Spanish, and Chinese to spread awareness of the effort to countless neighborhoods, neighbors, and to countless organizations in the community. I'm proud of this process, a process that sought to make participation in local government easier for voices often left out of the civic process. Those are the voices of the working class, of immigrants from China, Vietnam, Mexico, and Guatemala. I urge you, Councilmember Cedillo, and this entire body to uphold these folks' right to participate in the neighborhood council system and to uphold the election. Do not veto the bonk certification.
Thank you. Pablo Mirales. Pablo, come forward. No, Pablo. How about Angelica Lopez Moyes? Please come forward. That's fine. We'll hold it for him.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, council members. My name is Angelica Lopez Moyes, and I am the primary applicant for the formation of the new Historic Cultural Neighborhood Council. I started this process with conversation after conversation with stakeholders, the HCNNC Formation Committee, and a group of volunteers that has steadily grown, analyzed data, developed business and residential profiles, and we drew distinct similarities and differences throughout our communities. We did extensive outreach, reaching over 550 stakeholders by mid-January, and then we reached out to more than 4 times that number in the months that followed. Vince made some comments about the outreach that was done. We received over 150 letters of recommendations. Sorry.
Thank you. Mamli Hong Weinberg.
Good morning, council members. Hello, my name is Mamie Hong Weinberg. I have lived in the Solano Canyon area for over 50 years. I, along with my children and my family, are alumni of Castellar Elementary School. I'm also a volunteer there now. We are also patrons of Alpine Recreation Center, which I also volunteer at. And I attend the First Chinese Baptist Church, and we are also patrons of the St. Bridget's Catholic Center. So as you can see, I am very much vested in the community. Now, back in December and January, my husband and I and our children, we walked our neighborhood and we spoke to our friends and neighbors about the proposed subdivision, which we strongly believe in, because after all, we do need more representation. And as you can imagine, we also had people come over to our house and do it to sign, because they really believe in this as well. And as you can imagine, that took some effort. Well, I have to stop.
Thank you. Your time.
Okay. Anyways.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mei Lau.
Good morning, council members. This is regarding the veto of the neighborhood council subdivisions. I am the member of the XCNC and the vice president of the CCBA in Los Angeles, which is an organization have 27 members in Chinatown, which including business and other stockholders and property owners. We did the vote in June 7. We took people to get vote, and we did the majority vote of more than 500, but I don't know why it was vetoed. The basic fact that an election was held and anyone who wanted to vote had the chance to vote. Voter asked for HCNNC to represent all our 4 neighborhoods. For further adjustment are needed, let that process play out with done.
Thank you. Darcy Harris. Darcy will be followed by Norma Garcia and Eugene Moy. Please come forward. Ms. Harris?
Good morning, Darcy Harris. First, I want to just say that I strongly oppose this veto motion. I'm the vice chair of the Echo Park Neighborhood Council, and I was involved in several meetings with HCNC members, done staff consulting on the boundary. We support the revised boundary, and I know there was extensive outreach to stakeholders that I was personally involved in on this issue. As a personal matter, I'm also a stakeholder in Solano Canyon, and I support the subdivision. I'm very concerned about a veto to overturn an election where there was 90% in support of a subdivision and subverting the democratic process. Second, there were extensive hearings held at Bonk, documentation submitted, discussion for and against, and Bonk did not fail to consider the comments, as stated in the motion, of the affected communities. In fact, they adjusted the bylaws based on comments at the hearing. Third, the subdivision, overturning the subdivision will not solve the problems plaguing it, and the subdivision is really the only chance to solve the problems plaguing the current HCNC. So I urge you to support self-determination via the neighborhood council system and reject this veto.
Thank you. Eugene Moy. Phyllis Ling. Norma Garcia, please come forward.
Good morning, Mr. President and members of the council. I am a stakeholder in Chinatown and in the vicinity of Victor Heights and Solano Canyon as well. I'm also a stakeholder in El Pueblo. I am a member of the Formation Committee for the Historic Cultural Neighborhood Council. We encourage your support for the valid action taken by the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners, which was to certify the election, certify the bylaws, and approve the new neighborhood council. Your Department of Neighborhood Empowerment has worked with us, and we have achieved a great deal of community outreach. There has been a valid election held, and we encourage your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Norma Garcia. Phyllis Ling.
My mother had to leave to go back to work. I'm sorry. I was called first, Valerie Hanley, but I was
Yeah, we have you
indisposed.
down.
Okay, great.
Phyllis Ling. Followed by Ryan Reza Farsai.
Good morning, council members. I'm Phyllis Ling. I'm a Solano Canyon resident board member of HCNC, but I'm speaking as an individual. I support Bonk's approval of HCNNC, and I ask you to vote no on the veto. First off, Bonk's decision was made after considering over 150 comment letters, including over 140 support letters that I have in this folder, which I emailed to each of you. I hope that you received them. They come from all communities of HCNNC. Secondly, there's been a lot of misinformation involved in the subdivision process. I hope that you will carefully consider the facts before making any decision to veto this subdivision. And if necessary, you can also take don't have to vote on the veto today, perhaps take 21 days to consider the veto vote. So before taking any drastic action, please take a look at all of the facts. Please respect the will of the voters who asked for change, who voted no on and please vote no on the veto. Only 43 people voted no on this subdivision election. Thank you.
Thank you. Ryan Reza Farsai, followed by Tanny Ling.
Yes, sir. I'm going to retain my 3 minutes for other items, so I'm not going to speak on this item. Thank you very much.
You can speak on this item. We have you down. You want to wait for the multiple?
Well, I get 3 minutes, but you're only doing 1 minute for this item, so I don't want to spend my time on this item.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Tanny Ling, followed by Pablo Mirales and Valerie Hanley. Last three speakers.
Good morning, neighborhood council, or city council members, sorry. Good morning. My name's Tawny Ling. I'm a resident of Solano Canyon and homeowner for 6 years there. I support the decision to make the HCNNC official. Voting is a very important part of our democracy. It's a right, it's a responsibility, and for the neighborhood council elections, it's not that easy. It's a lot harder than signing a petition because you have to show your photo ID to a city official or provide a utility bill, property tax bill, pay stub, possibly a letter from a community organization. It's a vote by mail is a two-step process. And I am disappointed that the City Council is considering a veto action. The voters who made the effort to participate in this election overwhelmingly approved the proposal to form the HCNNC. And if boundary adjustments are necessary, I ask whether those adjustments could be made without a veto. These elections should have consequences, and the will of the voters should be respected. I want my vote to count just as much as you do. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Pablo Mirales, and followed by our last speaker, Valerie Hanley.
Good afternoon. I'm a resident of Echo Park for over 22 years, but I have an office in Chinatown, and my son goes to Castle R Elementary on Hill Street in the heart of Chinatown. I urge you to vote no on the veto to put this, both as a member of the school site council at the elementary school, as well as a member of the Friends and Alumni of Castle R Elementary School board. We discussed this measure of whether or not a subdivision would be beneficial to Chinatown, and it was an overwhelmingly positive response. Chinatown's a unique neighborhood. It deserves its own representation. Repeat that we had over a 90% vote positive for the the creation of this new district, and I really urge you to withdraw the motion to veto. It makes no sense. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Valerie Hanley, final speaker. Good afternoon.
Good morning, City Council members. I'm Valerie Hanley. I'm a third-generation merchant on Alvaro Street. My father actually started in 1930 when the street opened. We're asking you to vote no or withdraw the motion for the veto. We have stated a lot of facts. I have 15 extra support letters in favor for the new neighborhood council. I'm actually on the formation committee and sit currently on the HCNC that is current. I also went and did outreach with the merchants and got signatures for the petition to actually form the new neighborhood council. We felt that the historic cultural core was starting to be degraded, and so we needed to tighten up and have better representation for that historic core within those 4 areas. So we ask you please to either vote no or withdraw the veto for the new subdivision. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Cedillo?
Yeah, can I just have, yes, thank you so much, and I want to thank all the constituents who came down and who participated in the election and for their efforts and their outreach. If I can get the department to just come up and talk about the department's outreach, the institutional outreach that took place to make sure that we had an election that's commensurate with the political will of the community.
Thank you, Councilmember Cedillo. Gracie Liu, General Manager for the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. I am joined here with Mike Fong, who is my Director of Policy and Government Relations. In regards to the outreach, your question is what outreach we conducted.
Sure.
I'm actually going to have Mike speak on that because he handled the subdivision outreach for not only Historic Cultural Neighborhood Council, but also Westwood Neighborhood Council and Wilshire Center Koreatown Neighborhood Council.
Good afternoon, Councilman. We're only interested in the one downtown.
Yeah. Good afternoon, council members and Councilmember Cedillo. Thank you so much for bringing this to our attention and for bringing us to a full public hearing. In terms of elections outreach, our department hosted a town hall meeting at Castleton Elementary School on March 12th, attended by nearly 200 stakeholders at the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners special meeting. At that special meeting, a lot of comments and testimony were taken at that meeting on the subdivision proposal. In addition, we also attended meetings in the Arts District, in Little Tokyo, in Chinatown, and throughout the Historic Cultural Neighborhood Council area. In terms of outreach, we did a lot of social media outreach. We reached out to folks on the Neighborhood Council and the Historic Cultural North Formation Committee. We also have done different workshops throughout the district, and it's something that we need to do more outreach. We did the same outreach mechanisms for the Wilshire Center Koreatown Neighborhood Council subdivision election, where nearly 19,000 people made their voices heard. In the Westwood area, Westwood North area, same outreach mechanisms were done, where we had nearly 4,000 stakeholders made their voices heard. The department, in collaboration with the city clerk's office, did a lot of outreach, and we can always do more outreach, but we did the same type of mechanisms that we did in North Westwood and Wilshire Center Koreatown to really make sure people are aware of the upcoming election and have their voices heard in this subdivision election.
You want to tell us what languages were used for the outreach?
In terms of languages, we had Spanish, Cantonese, Mandarin. Those are the primary languages.
And this is reflective of the community, of course.
Yes, we definitely want to make sure that we have the languages reflective of the community.
If there's those who are dissatisfied with the results, they still have other options in terms of emulating the same process if they go through the procedures?
That's correct. Currently, the new neighborhood council is comprised of Chinatown, the Pueblo area, Solano Canyon, and Victor Heights. We have heard after the elections that certain members of Solano Canyon, Victor Heights were dissatisfied with the election results. There's two things that they could do. If they choose not to stay within the new neighborhood council, they can either discuss with Echo Park Neighborhood Council and see if they wanted to do a boundary adjustment that would take Victor Heights and Solano Canyon into Echo Park Neighborhood Council. Both neighborhood councils would have to agree to that, though. The other thing that they can do, because Solano Canyon and Victor Heights are considered historic, they have the possibility to also file for a subdivision application at the next opportunity when subdivisions are open again for that review to see if they could potentially become their own neighborhood council.
Okay. All right. I thank you for bringing that to our attention and to those who may not be pleased with the results, but it appears evident that there is an abundance of support for the results as they turned out, and so I want to. I think the phrase is receive and file. Is that the appropriate phrase? The report. We are withdrawing the veto.
Thank you. So if there's a motion, I'll second that to receive and file.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cedillo.
Thank you.
Mr. Clerk, open
Thank
the
you,
roll.
colleagues.
Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What's before us? Multiple items, speakers, come forward. Let's see, let's do multiple cards. Patricia McAllister, please come forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, let's talk about item number 25, the liens. I think we need to put a hold on, a freeze on all liens right now. The country is, we're burning down here in California, plus we've got thousands of illegal aliens who are about to break into the United States. I should have 3 minutes on here. I don't know why he gave me 2 minutes. And plus, I think we need to do that because the city council is being investigated. Councilmember Huzar, FBI came into this city hall last Tuesday and raided his office, his home, and his
Stick to the item,
office
please.
within the
item.
community. So I think because of all of these problems that we're having, we need to put a hold on all liens. We don't want these illegal aliens coming into California, especially Los Angeles, and displacing more African Americans and more citizens. And again, I think the FBI will be coming to the city council much more than what it's doing now, because this is truly a corrupt situation that we have here. Now, 26, you want $20,000 for the Get Help website. I went to the website. It's already there. Why do you need $20,000? It's already set up where anybody with drug problems, health problems can go to this Get Help website and find thousands of places where they can go and get treatment. Why do you have to hire someone and pay them $20,000 to look at the app? The application is already there. It's already designed. Stop giving away our money. That's what you're doing. Every time I see these things, I see this is my money you're giving away, you're playing with. And this person who's going to get the $20,000 is probably a friend of yours. The FBI will be back. You can believe that. Now, you have some new housing here that you're building here at 11301 Wilshire Boulevard, and you say you want to have it for veterans. I find it to be ridiculous that you're here celebrating veterans today when you have thousands of veterans laying on the street. You're doing the darn thing for them. You have a lot of nerve to bring vets up in here.
Okay, let's give her 1 minute, general public comment.
I want the veterans to go to this new location, 11301 Wilshire. And there's another one. There are two buildings. And one is building 205, 208. The city is getting millions of dollars, $23 million for one of the buildings, $17 million for the other. I want the vets to know that President Trump just passed a law where they don't have to wait months to see a doctor. They can go to any doctor. And you guys didn't say a word about that today, honoring 2 hours of veterans. My father was a Korean War veteran. He was captive, okay? He was captive. And he could never work after he got out. I have two nieces that are veterans. So don't tell me about vets. This is important. Veterans, you can go to any doctor now. You don't have to wait months and years to see a doctor. President Trump just passed that, and this council didn't say one word about it.
Thank you. Eric Previn. You pulled items 19, 24, 25, and 26. You'll be given 2 minutes to speak on those items, and then 1 minute general public comment.
Thank you, sir. It's Eric Previn from CD2 Studio City. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to Koretz and Bonin for considering coming to Studio City to discuss the campaign finance ordinance. But today on this agenda, you guys have, first of all, that was a very, very moving and lengthy presentation to the veterans, and I would thank this body for doing that. You know, as for extending the sunset on internet business taxes in the community, extending a sunset like that for just one group of internet businesses is a nice idea. Englander was trying it for the new car dealers as well. The only thing is, what about all the rest of the folks?
So we actually already voted on item.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. My mistake, sir. It was a long meeting. I was trying to keep track of what you guys were voting on up in there. Yeah, as for the cabinet box, which is a little giveaway, it's a 501c3. Koretz is making it available for a 501 in his district. It's reminiscent of the air scrubber gift from Wesson's district to Patrick Soon-Chong, the owner of the LA Times. That was a much larger gift, and I'm not sure that Soon-Chong could be considered a not-for-profit since he's a billionaire. But whenever we give away these, this is a transportation cabinet, if I'm not mistaken, the public takes an interest. Now, it's true, one of the prior speakers mentioned the Get Help app, and it couldn't be more appropriately titled for an Englander motion. It's a $20,000 grant to get some sort of technological stuff going, but this guy, I think, has been removed. And sir, do you have a license to drive this particular show? Because you're not the pro tem or the vice pro tem. I don't know if they're just out today, but we do appreciate your taking over where you can. Now, item 24 and 25 today signify the change in your civic process, policy committees, good governments, transparency, accountability, and participation initiative, which means actually the opposite, where you tried to push things up into
Let's give him his 1 minute general public comment.
You tried to push things up into committees to push them out of view because it doesn't look good when a council member leans on their constituent right here on television. You don't always have a over 2-hour presentation to stick in front of these comments. So it does require some tweaking, and I know you're tweaking it now, but for now I assume you're having fair public hearings on all those leans. And we do wonder that September 5th, 2018, up in public safety with Mitch O'Farrell banging the gavel, lawyer sat down. There were 6 CD14 vacations of property in public safety. We went, what? And who knows? I mean, now I know you got the FBI up on the 4th floor. I'm sure they're doing more important work than shutting down on council members, squeezing folks for money for vacations of property and liens and other things like that. That is not their job. They are busy, sir, with real crime. So thank you. That said, back to campaign finance. Koretz and Bonin, who are great leaders, have made some motions. We want them to come and speak to the folks in Studio City just to clarify how we can make the campaign finance ordinance, the public matching fund particularly, work for all the candidates in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Ryan Reza Farsai. So you have 3 minutes on your multiple cards, and then 1 minute general public.
Thank you, honorable council members. My name is Ryan Reza Farsai. My lifeline address is 2714 Portland Street. I'm a Beta Theta Pi. I'm here to talk to you about items 4, 5, 7, 8. Actually, I signed up for a lot of them this morning. Just to clarify, the city of LA has a $9.9 billion a year annual budget that is $27.5 million. Because we're recording this live, honorable council member. That's $27.5 million. What did they do?
Hold this time, Mr. Farsai. Stick to the items you pulled. The other items, public comment was already satisfied.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, number 7 and number 8, and number 4 and 5. All they do is basically they have a $27.5 million budget.
Let me just
and
cut
they're
in for a
spending
moment
71
to the speaker. So we've already taken up items 1 through 17. So you've signed up for 19 through
no problem.
28.
Let me tell you about the attorney, your ladies and gentlemen. The attorney works for the King of England. I am King James, reincarnated in this body.
Okay,
the attorneys
so
have made
clearly we're not
have sold you out.
on the subject matter, even of
the subject matter is pretty simple.
Items.
I'm Otto Hyder, reincarnated in America. Otto Hyder is the story of America.
Ryan, you've been warned, sir. So that's your final warning. Stick to the items, otherwise you'll be asked to sit.
Stick to the items. You see, you guys only had number 30 up there. I had to go and get a paper because you guys are trying to distract me. But let me tell you something. I'm trying to do my best here. And we'll talk about numbers 30 and 34. The fact is, the city has a $9.9 billion a year budget for all these items. Everything you're talking about is based on a budget no one follows on the city council. No one in California follows.
Maybe we should go to
No
general
one in
public
the U.S.
comment.
follows.
Okay, you just forfeited your time. Let's now go to general public comment. 1 minute,
My
please.
general public
Thank you.
comment, ladies and gentlemen, the kings of Europe and the state of Israel have you imprisoned. Those fires, you see that mushroom, you see that? It's being covered by the flow of water, Mr. Attorney. You made the laws for the kings of Europe so they can collect at their banks. Meanwhile, our firemen are dying out there to protect us. That's what's happening, ladies and gentlemen. I am a member of the children of Israel. I'm here to confess their sins. I'm a member of the monarchy. I don't need to collect any money in the banks because of the flow of water, because you're putting members of our community in jeopardy. That's right, that's what my opinion is. These fires are caused by the Illuminati, which is the IE, England and Israel. IE stands for England and Israel. I, at the end of your last name, is for Israel. My thing is this. I'm an Israeli, but I'm an American. I'm an Iranian. I'm here to save you, America. I'm here to save you from my brothers that want to take your money and control
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so colleagues, we have a few verbal motions. Let's now, we can take item 18F for Mr. Bonin.
Approval.
Okay, now on 18F, that's before us. Mr. Clerk, open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That's approved. Let's now go to item 25A. Mr. Bloomfield has a verbal motion.
Just to receive and file, please. Move that we receive and file.
Okay, let's.
And a second?
We have a second. I'll second that. Item 25A, to receive and file. Open the vote. Close the vote. Tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That's approved. And 25C, Ms. Rodriguez, you have a verbal motion?
Yes, to move to receive and file, please.
Okay, we have a second. Mr. Bloomfield, thank you. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That is approved. Now the balance, the balance of those items are now before us.
And those items would be items 19 through 24, 25D, 26, and 28.
Thank you. Let us open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Those are approved. Okay, we have general public comments now before us. Frederick Sillick, please come forward, followed by Torrance Brannon Reese. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. The people continue on the theme for the need of leadership. The proper visionary perspective requires an objective view. The greats of the past had a subjective preparation and perspective which still thrives today. Sargon, Alexander, Catherine, apparently, because as they say of our version of history is mostly guessing and the rest prejudice, were great because they oppressively eliminated any opposition to that greatness. To truly be a great leader, one would have to be a great follower at one time. We are left to find the principles of nature and follow these principles. Only when we follow the objective reality of nature do we reach the maturity of true direction and supervision. 1 + 1 = 2. 2 + 2 = 4 is objective. 1 = 3, 1 = 1,000,000 is subjective. Where, one might ask, does the subjectivity end other than with our destruction? It ends with objective reason and the objective individual of reason. 1 = 1. We need leadership.
Thank you. Next speaker is Torrance Brandon Reese. Please come forward. Don't see Torrance. How about Maurice Kitchen? Okay, I don't see Maurice. Jacqueline Richardson, please come forward.
There are approximately more than one level of Russian watchmen on the streets of Los Angeles today. You have the upper level, middle, and lower. I'm only familiar with the lower people that work on the lower class. for the past 20 years, there have been Russian watchmen on the cities of Los Angeles. When you tell city councils and other people about them, or county board of supervisors, they don't listen. For one thing, I can say they're nice to me. They watch, if the police officers were to ask Russian watchmen what's going on, they can help them solve a lot of problems. But I'm sure they're not going to tell them because they're watching for Russia. I watch for the United States. When I get in trouble, sometimes they warn me, sometimes they don't. If I'm nice, they warn me. They watch the police departments, they watch schools. Anything that needs to be watched, the Russian watchmen watch them. They've been here for about 20 years. As far as I know, they report crimes that the Russian people do. I don't know what else they do.
Thank you. Okay, what's before us?
Council has motions for posting and referral.
They are posted and referred. Desk is clear? Okay, any announcements, colleagues? Any announcements? Seeing none. Any adjourning motions? Okay, I'll rise for adjourning motions. I see Mr. Bonin.
Thank you, Mr. Buscaino. Colleagues, I'd like us to adjourn today in memory of Stan Lee, the creative force, the imaginative driver of Marvel Comics. Died yesterday here in Los Angeles at the age of 95. Many of you had the opportunity to meet him, judging by your social media accounts. Many of you had an opportunity to pose for photos with him as well. I had the great good fortune of meeting Stan Lee a couple times, both here, where he autographed some of my comics from the 1970s, and at Venice Beach when we dedicated a plaque at Muscle Beach to Lou Ferrigno, who played one of Stan Lee's signature characters, the Incredible Hulk, on television in the 1970s. Stan Lee was undeniably one of the most influential forces in pop culture of the past century. He started out in the comics field when it was dying. In the 1940s and 1950s, the field was starting to die. He was writing for Timely Comics at the time. I think he was making $8 a week, and started writing under various different names. And in 1961, he created the Fantastic Four. And after that, he created the Avengers and Spider-Man and Black Panther and the X-Men. And when he did, he changed a medium that was mainly for kids into something that was now appealing to teenagers and adults. He took a medium that had become tired and boring and lame, and he infused its characters with a humanity. And he made it both more human and more galactic in scope as his characters traveled around the universe. Not only did he create those main characters I just mentioned, but he also was really great at creating small characters, supporting characters like Spider-Man's Aunt May or the Thing's friends in the Yancey Street Gang. He was quite a guy, and back in the 60s and 70s, he used to write a monthly column called Stan's Soapbox. And it was not self-promoting at all. He'd just talk about whatever the hell was on his mind. And he wrote sort of what was groundbreaking in the comics industry at the time, an essay on racism. Back in the late 1960s, and some stuff about the war. And he really spoke to his readers and said, this country needs to change and our culture needs to change. Late in his life, he got to see his characters and his creations, co-creations, almost all of them with Jack Kirby or Steve Ditko, go from being the realm of nerdy little kids to being an actual popular culture phenomenon, where some of the biggest blockbuster movies star people that he created. Yesterday, when he passed, and when someone passes at age 95, it's not exactly shocking, social media just exploded with people who talked about how the characters he created touched them. Gave them a window into a different world and a spirit of imagination and creativity. It's been something that I think, like a lot of fathers, I get to pass on to my son, a shared appreciation of the genre. And while we are mainly a DC family, yesterday we were saying, make mine Marvel. And in memory of Stan Lee, enough said, Excelsior.
Thank you, Mr. Bonnet. Mr. Blumenfield.
I know we took a moment of silence earlier for the Borderline Grill victims and all the fire victims, but I just wanted to formally read the 12 names of the Borderline Grill victims into the record so that we could adjourn in their memory as well. And I'm referring to Ron Helis, who was 54, the sergeant with the Ventura County Sheriff, Aliana Housley, 18, Christina Morissette, 20, Mark Markey Meza, 20, Noel Sparks, who was 21, Jacob Dunnan, who was 21, Blake Dingman, who was 21, Cody Gifford Kaufman, who was 22, Justin Meek, who was 23, Telemachus Ophanos, who was 27, Daniel Manrique, who was 33, and finally Sean Adler, who was 48.
Thank you, Mr. Blumenfield. May their memories be a blessing. Anyone else? Adjourning motions? Okay, seeing none. Oh, Mr. Cedillo.
Colleagues, this Sunday morning was a tragic morning for so many of us. We suffered the loss of Antonio Gonzalez, who was the executive director of the Southwest Voter Registration and Education Project and also of the William C. Velasquez Institute, and was also the founder of the National Latino Congreso. You may have heard his show regularly on KPFK, Strategy Sessions with Antonio Gonzalez. You may have known of his work. Last Tuesday was a great day for us. We, I would say, saved our country by voter turnout and by changing the direction of our Congress and many local elections. I say to you that we are in debt to Antonio for those victories because many of them occurred where there are large populations of Latinos. And Latinos are voting in manners that are more evident than ever before. The victories that will take place up in Fresno County are a direct attribute to his work and his training. The big uproar around Beto in Texas is no doubt a product of his work. The origins of the Southwest Voter Registration Education Project come from Texas. Here, no less, in this chamber, I spoke to Nuri yesterday, and she was a volunteer for the Southwest Voter Registration Education Project. Said she was 16 or 17 when Antonio got her to go out and register voters in the San Fernando Valley so that the San Fernando Valley could have representatives that look like the San Fernando Valley. He was a champion for voter registration. He fought against at-large voting districts. He trained many activists, hundreds, thousands of them, and trained many Latino candidates in terms of making them be prepared for the challenges of leadership and governance. As Nativo Lopez aptly said, Nativo Lopez, the head of Hermandad Mexicana, said Antonio was a socialist by conviction, but a politically pragmatic Democrat who recognized the political realities of the day. He was both a visionary and an internationalist. He was so influential as a leader that he was noted as one of the top 25 most influential Latinos in America by Time magazine in 2005. Before there were Dreamers and DACA and the DREAM Act, the current movement for the undocumented, there were young people like Antonio Gonzalez. I got to meet him in the mid-'70s. He was a young leader then, charismatic, visionary, articulate, enthusiastic, zealous. He was amazing. You could see his potential at that time, and he realized all that potential. He was a Renaissance man. He was a foodie. So if you participated in any of the activities of the Southwest Voter Registration Project, they were often moving dinners. You'd go to one restaurant, then you go to another. Or you'd have all the top restaurateurs of the city come and display their ware at his favorite location in my district over at the River Center. He loved music, traveling, He would go visit actually many of the world leaders, friends with Hugo Chavez, was a leader in the efforts to normalize relations with Cuba. He did that way ahead of anybody thought about that. He was just an amazing, amazing man. I got to have lunch with him a few weeks ago. He made me lunch, and I sat with him. It was about 6-8 weeks ago. He had lost 85 pounds. He passed from cancer. And he called me to go sit with him because he was still working, and he was worried about our nation. And he had me commit to raise money for him for voter registration and Latino voter participation. It was amazing to sit with him and look at him. You could only recognize his mannerisms. He had lost so much weight. His big eyes were evident, but what was really evident was his commitment. And I sat there looking at him thinking, here's a man perhaps in the final weeks of his life. He convinced me that he was coming back. He said he had gained 20 pounds and he was on his way back. He had come from a coma and said that he had not walked to the white light. And so he convinced me he could only speak because he had throat cancer in a whisper. And he convinced me to raise money for him and to bring people together for this morning breakfast that we had a few weeks ago. And it was amazing to see him. I didn't want to say, are you crazy? What are you talking about? You're so sick. How can you even think that you would do this? But his convictions were so deep that even as his body was frail and a shell, he still remained persuasive and got me and others there to raise money and convene this leadership meeting a few weeks ago. As I said, he convinced me that he was on the comeback. And so I continue to raise money for him and bring people to the meeting. We had a great breakfast a few weeks ago. Mr. President, it was so critical at the time that I was actually there before 8 o'clock, for an 8 o'clock meeting. And I was the person asked to start the meeting. And then he walked in and the entire room stood and applauded. And this endless applause for him. It was quite moving. I hope it's captured and I hope people can see it. He was a little bit younger than me, but the cancer and the loss of weight, it looked like he had aged 20 years within a short year. He is loved by so many in the progressive movement, in the international movement, in the environmental movement. He was a huge environmentalist. He tried to get me to go camping with him, that he was not successful in. He was a dear, dear friend, a brother, comrade. He is survived by his loving wife, Alma Martinez, who is a leader in our community, former chief of staff of Gloria Molina for decades, and two beautiful daughters, Sarah and Isabel, his mother, his brothers, his sister, and thousands of people who love democracy, love him and miss him.
Thank you. Great tribute. I believe Ms. Rodriguez wanted to
Thank
say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Gil, thank you so much for those beautiful words. I had the privilege of seeing Antonio as an elder when I started my early years working with Councilman Mike Hernandez at a time when our community was being attacked through measures like Prop 209 and 187. He was a significant reason why we were able for so many years to start making an indelible mark in reflecting the presence of Latinos and their participation in governance and here in Los Angeles and throughout the country. And it just broke my heart to see. I know I had connected with Alma after I saw you after the breakfast and discovered what was happening. And, you know, his work will continue to be a legacy that exists through so many of us that were influenced and had the opportunity to learn how significant and important our work is to help make sure that Latinos are well represented in participating in governance on and helping to register folks to vote. I remember being out in some of the voter registration drives in the San Fernando Valley and Canoga Park, working with David Trujillo and so many other just incredible examples, civic leaders that don't often get the kinds of recognition that they deserve, but are instrumental in making sure that there's an opportunity for us to be represented and effectively participate. And so I'd like to sign on to this adjourning motion and just know that his legacy will live on forever. I had the privilege of also being in Dallas in these most recent elections and doing GeoTV because that's what we do. And the work clearly of Southwest voter registration under his leadership continues to thrive and will be carried forward, no doubt, through all of us, assuring that we have his back in this legacy. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Rue.
Just like to sign on as well.
Very good. So we have another celebration of life. I'll turn over to Marquise Harris Dawson, Councilman.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Buscaino, and thank you, Mr. Cedillo, for that presentation. I'd like to sign on as well, having been a young organizer and gotten chin checked, where he came to my office and he said, "Show me your database. Have somebody read me your script. Show me your list." And certainly someone who exemplified the insistence that we do our work and we do our work at a high level. Because our people deserve nothing less. So we thank you for that and ask to be added. I have a celebration of life today that I'd like to ask the council members to join in with me. He had a birthday last week, and I'm not. This is not a birthday cake, but this is recognizing that 20 years ago last week, our council president was first elected to public office here in Southern California. 1998, November 3rd, he won state assembly in the 47th district, our neighborhood, and he served us at the state as the leader of the state assembly and here on the council since that time. And so since there is no harder working man in Southern California politics, I thought it was apropos that we have a chocolate cake to celebrate, complete with a picture of our council president on the cover. So thank you so much.
Congratulations, Mr. President. Come to the center, Mr. President. All right. Let's give a round of applause for Council President Herb Wesson, 20 years of public service, and a birthday as well on top of that. You're blocking it, Herb. There you go. Let us all gather around our president for a photo.
Buy a suit like that. I would buy one of those.
Okay, with that, this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you for joining us.